Oh, I should.
Hello, Internet.
We are in you.
Hey now, as Paul says.
How do I make that? Okay, right. Cool.
Paul knows what he's doing. Don't you, Paul?
Never mind me. I'm just playing. Okay.
New RCR theme song. Never mind me. Paul's just playing. Jack can put that to music. Can't you, Jack?
Yeah. It's probably been, what, year since we've been planning on doing this?
Yes. One of these days.
I have some ideas, says Jack.
Yeah. I actually had a couple of false starts at some kind of something or other and never finished any of it. Damn it.
Yeah. The thing I think would be the funniest is if it turned out that you recorded a new one and it was still about like going back to Oz. Since there's a history of complaints about the song.
It wouldn't even be a cover.
This guy.
It would not be a cover of the same song. It would just be another song that is like somehow has a similar textual theme and sounds similar.
Yeah.
It was somewhere over the rainbow, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. The fun thing about the history of the complaints about the theme song is I complained about the theme song before the first episode. David had floated it as an idea, and I was like, well, that's terrible. Why would we use that? That makes no sense at all. That's all. I don't think he was expecting the feedback that I gave, which is, the Carrington Vanston story. And I was like, no, that's all. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. And I was very surprised to hear that as the song on episode 1. I was like, oh, I guess we're going with that anyway.
Yeah.
10 years later, still the song.
Okay. So speaking of the song, it plays. It's November 15th. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't ready for that. Okay.
I'm
with you. Go.
Okay. Yeah. It's November 15th, 2020, and welcome to episode 226 of the Retro Computing Roundtable. The RCR is a podcast about retro computer news, nostalgia, collecting, and more 10th anniversaries. As you may recall, the previous episode was the first one that was recorded after the 10th anniversary of the Retro Computing Roundtable. So we did a little bit of a reminiscences, I guess, about what got us into the hobby, what we enjoy about podcasting, the community, and that sort of thing. But Carrington wasn't here. Carrington is now here. And speaking of Carrington being here, today I am joined by 2 retro computing enthusiasts. I am Paul Hagstrom in Boston. I'm just doing this all in reverse order, I guess.
Well, you do the editing, so feel free to do things in whatever order is good for you.
Just shuffle.
That's right. I'll just alphabetize all of my words. Joining us today are 2 retro computing enthusiasts, the first of whom is Carrington Vanston in Toronto. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me on the show.
All right. And the second of whom is Jack Nutting in Stockholm. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
All right. So, so the Carrington was not here last time, as I just said, and so we'll maybe take this opportunity to continue the topic that we were talking about last time, which Carrington has not heard our responses to, now that I think about it, but whatever. I'm sure everything will be fine. So what thoughts do you have on the 10th year? You actually were on episode 1, so
I was indeed. Yeah. The show was the idea for the show came, I don't know what was mentioned on the last episode. So, last time on the RCR, David Grealish was is our founder. We should have a painting of him saying our founder behind all of us, because it was his idea and his show. And then he invited, I think it was Earl and I, onto the first episode. But the idea from the very beginning was that it would be a cycle of hosts. Like I think David was going to be on all of them, and he would just bring on his pals and just retro computer enthusiasts, and it would just change every single episode. But then Earl and I just wouldn't go away. We got on the show, and finally we drove David off the show, and we're still here. So that's what you get when you invite me on your podcast. I take over and I don't leave. So, and that's basically the story of the RCR. So, because the idea was it was going to be a roundtable of like just bringing people, like a 1930s idea where you'd have a group of people that are enthusiastic, and you'd get together and just like have lunch and talk about the topics of the day. But then Earl and I wouldn't go, and it became the same hosts over and over again, essentially. So, and then David left. I don't even remember when, but like a bunch of years ago, to go into comedy. He wanted to really focus on his stand-up comedy, and so he left us retro computer nerds and said, "I'm going to go do something, that's much cooler." And I don't know how that's going, but presumably he's doing awesome. So he left us for comedy. We're still here talking about computers from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went and looked up episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1 was October 23rd, 2010. I think I don't actually know when it was recorded, because all I know is what it says on the site. So that may be when it was recorded, or it may be when it was just posted.
Oh yeah, because now when we record, because you do most of the time, we force you to be host, and we push a lot of work onto Paul. Paul, you host. Paul, you edit. You got this, Paul. You normally say what the date is at the beginning, but I don't think that was practice at the very beginning. So it came out on that date. It could have been recorded a few weeks earlier. I don't know. I'm going to check my calendar while you talk.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it should be sometime prior to October 23rd, 2010. If your calendar goes back that far.
Sure, it does. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah. That is actually pretty cool, looking back at like what happened in 2006, since I still have the calendar. Actually, I think my 2006 calendar was, what was that called? I was using an app, like a Palm app on the Trio. It was called Pimlico Datebook, Date BK. And so Palm had its own sort of embedded, calendar thing, format, and the built-in calendar app. And Pimlico Datebook would refer to that. It sort of works like third-party calendar apps in the Mac ecosystem too. But it did some extra stuff. So it would embed codes in the notes field, that would tell, but like this is a repeating event, or there were certain things that it could do that the built-in app couldn't. And so even today, now, however many years later that is, 24 years later, I have these recurring events that come up. It says like Halloween or something like that, and then it has this like garbage in the notes field, which is left over from what Pimlico Datebook put there. So
that's really cool.
So I know that I still have my events from back then, because I can still see the garbage.
I don't have it in my calendar, though. It wasn't worth. Sorry, David. We weren't even worth putting a reminder in. I do say that on the 23rd, which looks like it was a Thursday. 23rd. That's October. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong date. Yep, no, that was a Saturday 23rd. So it could be that we recorded that day and he stuck it out live. I doubt it. Back then we were editing everything. In the afternoon of that day, I was hosting a rumba workshop.
I see.
So I used to teach very, very beginner ballroom dancing that I would teach so that I could get my classes for free. I would teach the beginner classes. In the afternoon of that day, I was teaching a rumba workshop. So
nice.
That's what I was doing.
Excellent.
I'm a man of many depths. Actually, I'm a man of many shallows is really what it is. I know like the first 3 steps of every dance ever. And that's all I can teach you. My students would surpass me very quickly. Like by class 6, I'm like, I don't know. I'm out of stuff. I got nothing for you. Move on to a real teacher. Yeah, don't know when we recorded. Presumably that weekend or the weekend before or something. So anyway, David Grealish, he's a comedian. We're now still doing this. That's my story.
Yep.
I think we're supposed to talk about what this has meant to us, though, right? Did you guys all talk about that? Am I supposed to contribute that sort of thing?
Yep.
It's meant a lot.
It's the people.
Stretch that. It's the people. I cover your face. It has. I can't say like my favorite retro computing thing. I think is still Kansas Fest because I've met so many people. You guys, I met so many people. Like like Paul, that's where I met you. I think I knew about you before that, but I never met you in person other than at Kansas Fest. And so many people that I love now and that are close friends of mine, I met at Kansas Fest. And that's like that thing that gets us together. And so that's really helped sustain relationships and put names to faces and make it fun. But I went to Kansas Fest a few years, I think, before the RCR started. In fact, I probably, because of Kansas Fest, is how I got on RCR in the first place. I was podcasting 5 years or so before RCR started, but other than 1 megahertz, I don't think I was doing any retro computer stuff. But RCR itself has its own little community. And so that's been super fun. And it's been a way to like get together with my pals and just talk about things in the retro computer community. And it's made me more aware of non-Apple things because I live such a vintage Apple-centric life that I think I would know nothing about Commodore, about Atari, about the stuff from the UK and weird Spectrum clones from Russia and like all the stuff we talk about all the time that I never would know about. So it's given me a much broader appreciation, I think, for old computers as a whole. And it's fun to keep up. I think it makes me aware that old computers are still a living ecosystem. I mean, nobody's making, other than, actually, that's not true. There's a new Commodore 64 coming out. But for the most part, we're talking about computers that are 30 and 40 and 50 years old. So it's not new stuff, but there's new hardware for them all the time and new software for them all the time and new gatherings about them all the time. Like it's such a vibrant thing that we can actually have a podcast where we talk for 2 or 3 or 17 hours every 2 weeks about stuff that just happened in those 2 weeks. Like we don't talk about, for the most part, like 1 year retrospectives. We're not getting together and say, well, here's the last 6 months. We say, well, here's what's happened in the last 13 days. Right. And it's amazing that we can do that 26 times a year right up into 2020. Like that's crazy how alive this ecosystem is. And so I think that's the thing. It's made me aware of that and it's let me be part of that. And I think that's cool. Plus, when I show up, you can't get rid of me. Ask David.
That's right. Yeah.
Good.
That's what I got.
Yep.
It's the people.
Yeah. So you were doing 1 megahertz prior to RCR then, right? I don't remember when that was.
Yeah. I think a few years before that. I think I started that in 2006, maybe 2007, something like that. So
cool. About the time that I was using
you guys are noobs.
Yeah.
I can say in the comments, Curtis mentions that right now he's working on some new software for a retro computer while listening.
See?
Perfect.
How cool is that, right?
Yep.
Curtis is the man. We do this because of Curtis. I don't come for the people anymore. I come for Curtis.
That's right.
The person.
Yep.
Come for Curtis. Stay to drive away David Grealish. Too bad David couldn't join us for this. I think he was on the 5-year one.
Well, and he was also on the 9-year one. When we hit whatever that was, 200.
Why was that a milestone?
It was episode 200.
Okay, round numbers. Round numbers cool. Monkeys like round numbers. I like it.
Yeah.
It's because of our fingers.
I see.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that is true. I mean, like what's important about the decade is just that it's the shape of our hands.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. But
Curtis now says we are going to be very disappointed.
Fantastic.
No, that's why I come to the show.
Disappointment.
That's awesome.
So one of the things that came up last time was that, of course, once we hit, at least by some definition, once we hit 10 years of this podcast, the podcast itself becomes retro, right?
I still disagree. We holy cow, I think from like probably very early episodes, we talked about that. Like, what does it mean to be retro? Like, we came out of the gate as gatekeepers. What is retro? What is not retro? And I think we were wrong from the beginning because I don't think retro is a certain amount old. I think retro, it depends on the person. Like for me, retro is what was out when you were in high school, when you're old enough to forget what high school was like. That's retro, 100%. So the stuff for me, retro is 1980s. But for my nephew, retro would be Wednesday. Like it just it depends on like the person and how old you are, and things are going to change. And it's just that we're old dudes, and so retro for us is 80s and 90s or 70s or 20s or whatever. But I think it's completely a personal thing. So for some people, yes, this podcast would be super retro. For me, it still seems like newfangled. It's not like I can't believe it's been 10 years. It still seems like a very new thing.
Yeah. Well, and of course, when RCR started, that was 10 years after the year 2000, right?
The
Which
year 2000
also
still
seems
seems
quite
in
recent.
the future. Yeah, year 2000 is always a few years from now.
There was, I'm sure we even mentioned this here before, but Conan O'Brien did a little, like a little thing about in the year 2000. He had this little segment, and he did that. He did that in like 1999 or whatever, but he kept doing that in 2000 as well.
There's an audio place here. I don't know if it's a chain nationally or if it's in the States as well or whatever, but 2001 Audio Video, not sponsoring RCR. And that still, to me, seems like a perfectly reasonable name to call something, to talk about like the future of audio. 2001, absolute. 2001 will always be in the future. I don't care what the date is.
We'll never achieve it. We'll never get to it.
Yeah, one
Always
can
in
never
front of us more.
achieve. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that Zeno's arrow thing. 2001
Yes,
is always a few years in the future.
So I think, I'm not sure that we ever actually came down on the side of saying that 10 years was retro. I think we probably always had this view that wasn't it. But nevertheless, some people say that, and so we could use that as a bit. That's
Sure.
just to say, like, the topic, for this episode is episode 2.
I mean, we'll get us 10 more years of shows.
Right. So, but anyway.
I see you even brought up on display what we talked about.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. See, cool.
And what actually I think is sort of surprising too is that when I was looking at these things,
hey, I wasn't on episode 2. Oh,
yeah,
David,
you were on episode 1, and yeah,
he got rid of me but then I'm back just when he thought I was out.
Okay.
I pulled myself back in.
But yeah, so it turns out that actually, much of what we talked about then, we still talk about now.
Yeah.
So
we're not retro, we're repetitive.
Yeah. So episode 2 had David Grealish was hosting, and Evan Koblenz, John Leake, and Derek Warren. So John Leake of the Retro Maccast and Derek Warren of the Mac Folklore Radio. And Evan Koblenz then of March. So.
Oh, I see. I made a return in episode 6.
Uh-huh.
He was running out of guests. I think he was probably nobody wanted to come on, and then I came back. Oh, that was your mistake, David. That was your mistake.
The return, yes. But anyway, so I'm not sure if there was I'm not sure if so Windows 1.0 turned to 25. That was a topic of episode 2. So I guess that means what? Now it's turning 35.
Yeah.
Which is somehow less round, but anyway. But it was pretty interesting. I actually went back. Maybe I'll find a little bit of that audio and drop it in here somewhere, just because it's kind of interesting to hear about Windows 1 turning 25. And so nobody on the podcast
35 now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But nobody's writing blog posts about it. What's up with that?
No one cares about the number 35.
That's right.
Except for us, apparently.
So, and what else? I guess the David pointed out a Top Documentary Films site. He was sort of got it talking about a bunch of like documentaries he liked. The Machine That Changed the World, Triumph of the Nerds, Micromen was actually new at that pretty much new at that point. And that's a pretty interesting site. It still exists actually. Let's see. I think it's even here. Yeah, I brought up the web pages as well for these other things, so you can read about Windows 1.0 turning 25 and John Leake making a banana junior.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But Top Documentary Films actually is it looks like it's essentially like a YouTube indexing site. So it doesn't actually host any of these films, but it does sort of collect people who have illegally uploaded documentaries to YouTube. You can find them indexed here. And so when I actually tried to find whatever it was like the Machine, like Triumph of the Nerds or something like that, all I get is a block, but that's okay. So The Rise of Accidental Empires, it looks like it has a little thing, and then I hit it. Oh, it worked. Okay, well, some of them work and some of them don't. But anyway, it's kind of neat though if you are looking for documentaries. It is sort of categorized, and they do have a number of computer things. So that's a link that passed the test of time. I don't know. Not much more to say about that, I guess. But okay. Oh yes, and actually, one thing that I noticed, I did actually sort of like quickly listen to episode 2, and David talks a little bit about talking with John X about the theme music, and how the John X, the person who composed it, got started in music production on Atari ST. So they talk a little bit about that. So anyway, that's our, I guess that's our audio source for David claiming that we have the rights to use this.
Right.
Because sometimes we've looked around to try to figure out, like, on what basis we claim that we have the rights to use this,
Right.
and we never really nailed that down. But apparently, David was in contact with him. So
Sure, that's what we did for Eaten by a Grew. Kevin just was talking to MC Front a lot and said, "Hey, can we use your song as a podcast?" And he's like, "Do it, great. If you guys ever make a ton of money off that podcast, then throw something my way." Like,
very
deal.
cool.
Like,
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so is there more to this topic? It could be that we can just keep stretching this topic out. I do kind of like the idea of revisiting the previous episodes to a certain extent, although it's going to turn out really that there isn't that much to say. Everything is turned to 10 more years old. So
This could be a second podcast.
Yeah.
We can call it RCRX, where all we
Yeah.
do is talk about the episode from 10 years previous.
right.
Well,
Errata.
Curtis is still with us in the chat, and he says RCR stands for recursive retro now because we're just talking about our own stuff.
Yeah. I think we were also talking, this was a conversation that was happening in a Slack channel about why is it RCR? Like, do we really spell retrocomputing as 2 words? I think not, right?
Nope.
It says that on the webpage, it says retro space computing space roundtable, but I certainly never have written it that way.
Nope. That also was a discussion ahead of time. I was on the losing side of that as well.
I see. Well,
because if it's 2 separate words, retro and computing, then it kind of implies that it is the round table, which is retro. It is it's the retro computing round table.
See, I hadn't even thought about that. I was thinking about, like, retro space computing is like the part of computing that is retro, but it is still computing, right?
Although
Whereas
I would be very
retrocomputing-
interested in a podcast about retro space computing.
retro space computing, yes.
I want to do retro space computing.
All guidance computer and such.
Totally.
Yeah. Maybe later I will talk about watching Away. That's been sort of interesting. That's a relatively recent Netflix show about a trip to Mars.
Right. Yeah, I've seen the ads for it, but I haven't started watching.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good, but then, well, I made it to the end. It didn't get renewed, so we don't know, what happens beyond the end of the first season. But I thought it was pretty good, and then I read the reviews, and the reviews didn't like it. So I don't know, whatever.
So now you don't like it
anyway. Well, it's sort of disappointing when I thought it was good, and then you read everybody else thought it was dumb. So I don't know, but you out there will like it, I'm sure. Okay. Anyway, let's see. What are we doing? I think we could probably go on to feedback.
Feed us some back,
Yeah.
Paul.
Here it is. Yeah. So we got some. So Anthony on Facebook pointed out that the gift idea from last time, it was like a blueprint, like a patent print poster for the Commodore 64. It's the Commodore 64 patent drawing, or at least that was what it was called. In fact, it was the patent drawing for a Max machine, a multi-Max computer. So we were, because at the time we had been sort of commenting, like, this does seem like not quite right.
Right.
Like, it doesn't look like a Commodore 64, but it does in fact look like a multi-Max.
Okay.
So anyway.
There we go.
So that's what the patent drawing. So it's the person selling it is still selling it as a C64 thing, but
Yeah.
and I actually don't know a thing about the multi-Max. We have a photo of one on our Facebook page provided by Anthony, but I hadn't heard about it before. Actually, maybe I should even pull a photo of that up. Multi-Max Commodore. You guys know this machine?
I do not.
No, not at all. Know nothing of the multi-Max or any Max machine.
Max Headroom.
Max
Who's a
Headroom.
machine?
Let's see. Multimax. I see. I understand. Okay, wait. So I think Multimax actually is okay. I misread the thing. So Multimax is actually a modern cartridge of software for the Commodore Max. The Commodore Max is the machine. Anthony, the very person who told us this on Facebook, in fact, says it's a 2K Commodore 64. It's very basic. It was released in Japan only. So Max, perhaps, is how that is then. But
very handy to have the people
Max
who give us feedback be in the live chat so they can help us, because clearly we can't
help
read.
us understand.
Anthony, I appreciate your assistance.
We need all the help we can get.
Apparently.
Right. But it's yeah, so that's actually pretty cool. The I mean, because the patent print does look exactly like that. Yeah, I mean, like that is what the machine is, and it looks kind of neat. I think it would be kind of neat to get, but it's a 2K Commodore 64, so
It looks like Commodore 64 put out by Tandy, is what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
when I look at the Max,
it's sort of grayish, right?
Yeah, it looks like a Coco. One day a Coco fell in love with a C64, and their love would not be denied, and they named their son Max. Max.
Yeah.
New from Tandy.
Interesting.
Yeah, what a weird thing.
Look at that keyboard. Does that keyboard not scream bubble keyboard?
Yeah, it must be.
Oh, that is a terrible keyboard. For how early is this machine? Why would they do that? Someone says, "Oh, you thought our computer was bad? Oh, we'll show you. We'll make you appreciate the C64.
Yeah.
Look at this thing. You just try to type on that."
Well, maybe it's quieter. 1982.
It could be. What I hope is it's actually the way they did it was they used a bubble pack. So you can press each key only once, and then you have to buy a new keyboard. Pop, 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 pop. Oh no, I need another E. That'd be the best.
That would be fun.
Like I say, that's how we make our real money. It's not selling the computers. Let me tell you, folks. Let me tell you the story of the razor and the blade. And welcome to the Commodore Max, the keyboard that you buy again and again.
See, that's perfect. Consumables, right? That's the way to stay in business.
That's the way to go.
Yeah. Let me know how that worked out for them.
Yeah. And actually, Anthony also posted a photo of a Commodore B128 that we had been talking about before, which is also known as a Commodore 610. So if you want to see a photo of like someone's actual machine working, you can look in our Facebook group for that. And it was and he used a Apple IIc, like 9-inch, ET shaped monitor, which is very nice as well. But anyway, yeah, I still don't feel like I have seen the Commodore B128 prior to it coming up on our episodes. When we talked about the not quite actually Porsche designed PET, that was designed by somebody else because the Porsche design was impractical or something like that. But it was this sort of like rounded shaped PET, and there is a Commodore 128 series that's kind of in that same, that same kind of design language. But I hadn't seen them before that episode. So
right. Yeah, I've not seen these before either.
But now I want one, irrationally.
Oh, you want two of them?
That's right.
Come on, you're Paul.
Just in case.
Just in case.
I
still love the PET. I still think the PET is one of my favorite. I mean, it's not my favorite computer, but just like it's an icon of industrial design for me. Like it's one of the ones that stands out. That's unique. I don't like I think it's 2001, whatever the one with the built-in cassette, because that has that terrible keyboard. But once it moves to the full proper keyboard, that's just a lovely computer. Like it just screams the future as seen from 1977, right? And that's amazing. I love it. It's just one of my favorite. There's certain like computers that I don't necessarily love using, but that I just love to look at, like just that I would want to possess as a piece of art. And for me, the PET is one of those. I forget the operating system. I'm not a CPM fan, whatever, but just to look at it, I would appreciate it more than I would appreciate most statues. I just love the industrial design of a Commodore PET.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Agreed.
I'm sure I've commented on this before, but and this actually they're super hard to photograph. something like a Newton. A Newton is also very hard to photograph, but that's because when you try to photograph a Newton, you end up photographing yourself. But the PET has this sort of angled, it's sort of a monitor in an angled case, right? So it's sort of like a trapezoid type. I don't know what you call it, but anyway, whatever. 4 shapes, smaller on the top, than on the bottom. But there's something about it. It's very hard to get at an angle that doesn't ruin that effect. Like anytime I try to take a picture of a PET, it looks like it has a square monitor and a tilted CRT. It's
because normally you're taking the picture from above it, so you get that trapezoid effect where the top seems wider because it's closer to you, and it suddenly makes it look like a square. If you take the picture from like keyboard height looking up at it, then it's absolutely like it's deep thought and it's very pyramid shaped, and that's a really nice look.
It is just, I mean, it's funny though, because like I don't perceive this with my eyes, right? So I look at it and I see this sloped thing and I take a photo of it and suddenly it's turned square.
I wonder if that was the thinking though, if part of the industrial design was you were going to sit in front of it with your head higher than it, so looking down, it would seem like, and they were kind of playing with that angle because of the viewing angle of the user. I wonder if they actually thought like that, or if it was just like, oh, this is cool feature looking, and they were big fans of Zardoz, and this kind of looks like the Zardoz helmet, and they said, well, that's good enough for Sean Connery, it's good enough for us. I'd say 50-50, it could have gone either way.
Yep. Anyway, yeah, so let's see what else to say. Eric on Facebook shared a link to a Target haunted computer. I don't know if anybody has. This apparently was sold at Target last year. So let's see if I can bring this up. So what we were linked to an eBay auction for.
How did I not know about this thing?
Yeah, it actually is it's almost pet shaped. So it really is quite pet looking, actually. It has a big, apart from the slanted thing that identifies a pet as a pet, I suppose, but the keyboard kind of looks pet like. But it's just, it's basically a typewriter keyboard at a vertical screen. It appears to be basically a mirror on the screen, but there's lights behind it with this little skull that will like talks to you, and it's supposed to be some sort of Halloween decoration. So, and it's built, as if it were made of like marble or something like that. It's it's got sort of like cracks and stuff in it.
It's we absolutely didn't know about this, or we would have picked it last year around Christmas time. I 100% have not seen this thing before.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it's a shame too, because now I want to get one and use it as a Christmas ornament.
But it's relatively large. I mean, but
a tree doesn't need more than one ornament. This will be my one.
But yeah, so it's let's see. There's a video of. Let's see. No, I would not like to try YouTube TV. But so there's a video of it playing that we can maybe link to. But just it lights up and it. It's really quite ridiculous.
The funny thing is, I wonder how many people that are too young to be like our target market, for instance, would think of this as a computer. They look at it and go, what is this thing? It doesn't look like any computer that's been made for the last 30 years. Like they'll think laptop or maybe an all-in-one desktop or something like that. But this kind of idea of a computer with the monitor and the built-in keyboard and stuff just isn't a thing. This isn't what anybody young enough to say what a computer looks like today. Like nobody 20 years old is going to think this is a computer.
Yeah.
I guess it's haunted because old people are haunted by the specter of oncoming death.
It is true that like 2019 is a weird year for this to have come out. I mean, this really seems like it should have been 1996 or something, right? Anyway,
bizarre.
So I thought it was neat to have been made aware of this, and it's conceivable that I might want one.
Yep, I think I want one too. Well, maybe not. I want to want it, but I don't necessarily want to have it.
Yeah, it's $68 for this particular eBay auction. So
I don't want that much.
Yeah,
no.
I want Paul to have it and then bring it to Kansas Fest so I can play with it. I want to play with it. I want it like $3.
Well, and I think playing with it is basically like watching it for 20 seconds and then you're done.
I'm good with that.
There's nothing else going on.
Seen it
Yeah.
But now I've got this idea I should make Christmas ornaments out of actual vintage computers. Just like hang this Coco on your screen. They're light enough. Actually, you could probably use a Coco as a Christmas. I won't even bend the branch.
Right.
Atari 800 will go right through the floor.
That's right.
Exactly. Let's see. And then I guess Gregory sent email a while back. I don't think we mentioned this, but and it's just sort of a note, episode 222 where we talked about second computers. Gregory reports his first computer was a Cosmac Super Elf with 256 bytes of memory, built from a kit and upgraded to 4K. And second was an Apple II Plus, and third was an Apple II GS, and still has all three computers. So, very short story with not much character development, but nevertheless, it's nice to, it's nice to hear the stories, and it's cool that actually all three computers are still in his possession. So
yeah, that's unusual.
Yeah. And so I think I'm going to punt one more time. So we have a listener, Klaus, who started from the beginning listening to the RCR episodes and has periodically been sending us feedback about episode 94 or whatever like from some time ago, and I've been collecting them. I think maybe we'll just do a Klaus feedback.
Yes, as Klaus climbs Mount RCR, and we get status from different plateaus. It's amazing.
Yeah, actually, that is probably a fairly good retrospective activity.
This is how you become a host on the show, in case people are wondering. You have to listen to every episode and then send us battle reports. And then finally you will fight Paul with a microphone.
Right. Armed with a Model M.
There can only be one.
Anyway, okay, we'll leave I guess we can leave the feedback at that point, and we can move on to the items of interest and news. And Carrington has the first of these.
Okay, so the first one is just the Atari VCS, the vaporware thing that's been coming from the Atari that isn't the original Atari, but owns the name Atari and pretends to be Atari and whatever. And it's not really a computer, but it's retro stuff and it's retro gaming, and it's supposed to come out. Well, it's supposed to come out 5 years ago and last year ago and next year and Wednesday and who knows when. So, but the most recent news is they've announced that the games that come with it. So it's going to ship with 100 games. Then they're going to call that the Atari Vault. Then there's Atari Vault Volume 2, another package of 50 games you can get for $5. Still no word on whether you can run other software or it's but at least it's here's your 100 games. The fun thing was, so they've announced that and they said, here's a big deal. And it made AP News that it's coming out. And here's the Atari Vault game. And so they have a domain name, the official Atari domain name for that is atarivault.com, which is currently not responding. Because of course it's not. This is such a shambles of a zombie thing coming forward. But if you go on the atari.com site /game/Atari-Vault, then it'll try to link over to Atari Vault saying that's the official site, but it doesn't work. But you can go on to shop.atarivcs.com /Atari-Vault or whatever. And I did find the list of games, and it's pretty sweet. I mean, it's one of these things where I have been making fun of this thing. It seems like since episode 1, maybe it was episode 6. Maybe I came back on the show in episode 6 specifically to talk about how this thing will never actually come out. Still hasn't come out. So far, proving me right. And yet when it comes out, I'll probably buy one, which is super sad because let's face it, VCS games give you minutes and minutes of enjoyment. But I have nostalgia for it. And if it's cool, if it could run other stuff, I'm such a sucker. I'm going to end up buying this stupid thing. But anyway, we will have a link both to the non-working official site, which maybe someday will be working, and also for the shop site where you can see the list of titles. So you can see the 100 games that you'll get with the device when it ever does come out. So, but to make this also at least a little retro computer related, because the whole RC, or which should be just R or whatever, the C64, which we've talked about before, which is the new version of the Commodore 64. It's kind of like the Commodore 64 version of this, the VCS. It's a re-release of something that looks like a 64, acts like a 64, quacks like a 64 or whatever, and takes cartridges shoved into the back end of it like a C64. It is out in Europe, I believe. I think it came out maybe late last year, and we talked about it coming out, but I don't think we've ever talked about the fact that it actually got released. And then it said coming soon, really, really soon. It's going to be in North America really, really soon, and it's still not North America. So I don't know if it actually came out in Europe and it's just not selling well enough. They didn't bring it to North America, or it didn't come out, or whatever. So it's still not out, but they have updated the website really recently. Like in the last week, the Retro Games site, that's kind of like the official site for this, changed a bunch of text and said, oh, it's back, it's coming soon. So I think maybe it's right on the cusp of coming out again. And I only want to bring it up, not that I'm a C64 fan, but I mostly only talk about Apple. So I'm trying to think of things that are not Apple for me to talk about. Somebody's got to do it. And then this shows an example of like a computer version of this VCS thing that may or may not have come out, like the VCS thing. I don't know. That's what I got. There's my news. Not a lot of news.
Yeah, I am interested. I'm curious about this.
Like, did it actually come out or not?
Yeah.
Like, it was supposed to come out in November or December of last year, like in time for the holidays last year. But I don't know if it actually came out or not. Like, has anybody, maybe a listener will know. Like, if you are, well, actually, Jack, did this come out? Can you purchase this thing locally?
I don't know. I've seen the Mini in stores. I still see the Mini in stores here.
But this is the full-size one. This is the one that's supposed to look just like a C64.
In person at all.
Right.
So I don't know.
And you can switch. I think with a switch, you can go back and forth between C64 mode and VIC-20 mode. So it can be a VIC-20 too. If the C64 is simply too much power for you, and you think that's way too many characters on the screen, you can't expect me to read a line that long. Come on, you can switch over to VIC-20 mode where you see like 5 characters a screen or something.
Yeah.
Or is it 20 characters? Is that why it's called the VIC-20? Why was it called the VIC-20?
I don't even know why it was called the VIC-20, but I believe it is 20 characters across.
Okay. Because I think you guys said that in a recent episode I wasn't on. I was listening and I was like, that why it's VIC-20? I always thought it was like 20 kilobytes or something.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the C64 is presumably K based, right? Rather than 64 characters across.
Right. Well, yeah, it had 64K of RAM. But the 20, then the VIC-20, yeah, I don't know. 20 characters? I don't know.
20 characters? 20K? Coincidence?
Too bad nobody in the world will know the answer to these questions.
You will, and they're probably shouting it in our online chat at the moment. I'm just not looking at it. Sorry, guys.
Unknowable. That's right. So in the chat, it's being said, someone called Nimmer Panther says that it looks like the C64 Maxi, another name for the full size of this, is on sale on Amazon right now.
So is Max like the secret word of this podcast episode? Say secret word, divide $100. Why do we keep saying Max?
I don't know.
Good question. I don't know. But so I wonder if we can get, is it possible to get a C64 Maxi in the US? Quite possibly.
Like the one that's out that was supposed to come out in Europe was supposed to be switchable between PAL and NTSC. Like you could get one and then just run it here. I just don't know anybody who has one or anybody talking about one. And I would have thought it would be a bigger deal.
So I see one on a Swedish website that says it's not currently in stock, but they have a price for it, which is about $170.
Okay. And since it boots to basic mode, like you can use it as an actual C64, like program it or whatever. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it has like an SD card for saving disk images, or I don't see any mention of any such thing.
Yeah, I mean, it does say that there's a USB connection.
Okay.
So
in a sense, that's the advantage of something like a C64, like Commodore having basically gone away. I think you could get away with putting out a C64 that ran software that had a save slot that basically was, hey, we've put out the C64, no one's going to see you. But you couldn't do this with an Apple II. Like Apple would right now say, no, you can't put it in a 2E. Maybe we want to use that code in something.
Right. All right. Anyway,
that's what I got.
Cool.
Who's next?
Cool. Oh, I think I'm next. Yes. Okay, so this is I lifted this from the feedback as well. So Tony on Facebook wrote that it sort of, is that true? Is that true? Was it on Facebook? I don't remember. Yeah, maybe it was on Facebook. We often hear from Tony also by email, but in this case it was by Facebook. Pointed out this thing called it's a write-up on Hackaday about procedurally generated retro computer emulators, and so it is essentially my understanding of this is that you basically, someone, okay, so this is Marquis de Geek wrote a project that will generate an emulator based on a specification. So you give it a specification of kind of how the machine is put together, and it will create a single page JavaScript emulator application with assembly and a disassembler. And the source code for this is not quite available. So what is available are the things that were generated by this system, right? So there's some examples here. A Space Invaders game, and I think there's Dragon 32, Sinclair ZX80 and 81. There's a work in progress Spectrum, Jupiter Ace. And so the way this works is that let's see, so maybe we'll do Space Invaders. So if you click on it, it will basically put the emulator up in the screen, and there's a sort of like a running disassembly that happens on the left, so you can kind of like see the instructions going by, and a screen on the right, and it's actually playable. So there are keys. If you can insert a coin and hit player one start and go left and right and shoot or whatever. And I've played Frogger on a ZX80 or ZX81, I guess, using this.
So wait, hold on. So it procedurally generates this, but wouldn't the info you have to give it be everything about this? Like, how is this saving any time?
Yeah, so that's actually partially my question as well. I mean, like, so it's like, I mean, you definitely have to sort of give it all these things, all the connections. I think the idea is that what's being factored out is all the sort of like screen handling and stuff like that, so that you define the machine in some sort of domain specific language, right? Mm-hmm. But then this will generate all the sort of interface stuff and connections between the chips that you define and that kind of thing. I think that is the idea. So I guess one thing that is not entirely clear to me is how this is different from a project like MAME, which
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah. Like, isn't this simply, okay, I want an instance of MAME and use these bits. I want that ROM and this computer setup or something, which is kind of cool, but it's already being put together in MAME. Like, it's not procedurally generating a brand new fantasy computer. Maybe I'm completely misunderstanding what's going on here. Yeah. And maybe this is the coolest thing ever.
It's conceivable that this is maybe a little bit more, I don't know, like on rails or something than MAME is. So with MAME, you really just, you're writing a bunch of little C programs that all talk to each other. Whereas I think the idea with this is that, you're putting together something sort of like a little, XML file or whatever that says like, these are the things that connect, and, and it knows how those things behave and then how to connect them or something. It's interesting, at least. I'm not entirely sure, like how distinct a project this is. It might be that it's not necessarily redundant with MAME, but has a pretty similar kind of aim.
I think for more info, it looks like Curtis is saying that they talked about it on the latest Coco Talk. So maybe we'll put a link to that in here. Because maybe you guys know more about this than we do. So I feel like I'm floundering here, and maybe this is really cool. Yeah. He says they've understood it. It's got an XML style language, and you define the graphic, the CPU, the sound, whatever, and it runs it through a converter program.
Yeah,
still feels like MAME.
Yeah.
Well, but I think the difference is, say, the difference between HyperCard and HTML, in a sense. Like, HyperCard is a very specific, binary format that requires running on a Mac and blah, blah, blah. Whereas HTML is a description of elements. Here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing. I think that's more like along lines of what this is. Maybe it's more like, okay, here is a CPU object for this that we're going to emulate, and here are kind of its parameters and how it works, and here's how it interfaces with this memory and with this graphic system and stuff. So it's like, rather than writing programs to do all these bits, you write a declarative specification of what the things should be, and it has enough stuff behind it to be able to sort of break that out into the actual code for all that. I guess that's the idea.
I feel like we're doing that thing that we do where we talk for 20 minutes about something we don't understand in a way that convinces somebody knowledgeable like Quinn Dunkey to come on our show and talk about things. This is the other way where we get co-hosts. So you'll find out in a couple of weeks if we were successful when somebody who knows what they're talking about comes on here to say, oh God, you guys are just always screaming at my headphones. Why can't you have anybody with any knowledge on this episode? I feel like we're doing that. We do that pretty well. I feel like we're doing that now.
It's kind of our thing.
It's kind of our thing.
But this does sound right. though. I mean, like that it is sort of that it is a slightly higher level way of putting these things together, so that and its target is JavaScript to begin with, right? It's not so MAME, there is a JS MAME that renders, whatever that sort of compiles out to something that can run on the Internet Archive or whatever. But
right.
Okay.
So Curtis says that what I said seems to be his understanding also, and mentions that there's a video explaining it.
Yes.
So we can direct our viewers/listeners to watch the video and understand more than we understand right now.
Yeah, although when so we were going to recommend going and talk, like listening to the Coco Talk, where Curtis says their motto there also is talk for 20 minutes on something we don't understand. So
that's a lot of retro podcasts, to be honest.
Yeah.
White guys with opinions.
Anyway, yeah, but there are web pages that you can go look at if you find that interesting.
Cool. So what's this next thing you got here that I'm very excited about, Paul? Because I had not heard about this.
Yeah, well, so there's a different Anthony. I was trying to make some sort of pun on another and Anthony, and I just couldn't manage it. But at any rate, on Facebook, a different person named Anthony posted something about 8-bit Unity having a new release, and I kind of think that we did talk about this at some point in the past.
Okay, I think I must not have been on that show, because what the heck is 8-bit Unity? And I'm excited just based on the name. Yeah, I know what Unity is.
Well, this has nothing to do with Unity, the 3D software. But the idea is more, here's a uniform approach to making games for multiple different 8-bit computers all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Handling all the various graphics and stuffs so you can handle them in one way, and then they're rendered in their own way on
see, how is that going to work when you've got like sprite-based computers like the Atari 8-bits and computers that can barely make one tone of sound and can't put two different sorts of colors together, like my beloved Apple II. And I'm not saying the Apple II isn't wonderful, but let's face it, the Apple II has some significant limitations that later computers don't have. How the heck do you have this work for Commodore 64, Atari, and then what is the Apple version going to look like?
Yeah.
Or are you holding back those other platforms to the limitations of my beloved Apple II, which is perfectly fine with me?
Yeah. So I think it's a bit of both. I think it definitely doesn't you can't make a powerhouse sprite powered game that the C64 could handle that nobody else could handle. But it's kind of like the demos I've seen are kind of like you could maybe kind of make some point and click adventure type games where you have characters walking around interacting with an environment. So it does some general purpose graphics routines, and it will use sprites where it can for some things on some systems, and not use sprites on things that don't have sprites.
That makes a lot of sense, because of course I immediately think, action game, but computers apparently are used for other things too. So I guess there's lots of things you can make a computer do that isn't a fast moving Twitch game.
Right.
This might be more my own limitation than other people's. So.
Yes, I think the reason I think we talked about this before is that I kind of remember this 8-bit Slicks game.
Yes, I think we talked about this too.
Yeah, so it's a game that's written in so the idea is, of course, that you basically write it once and compile and target all these various platforms, and it works out the details. But obviously, it needs to be doing something that the computer is graphically capable of doing. So, in fact, actually, when I'm looking at the Apple II version of 8-bit Slicks, what I'm seeing is that is minimally double high res. It might be, I mean, it's supposed to be 8-bit, right? So it shouldn't be Apple II GS, but this is that's too many colors for that many pixels.
Oh, double high res is not easy to code in.
Yeah. But at any rate, it does seem like this game exists on the Commodore 64, the Atari XL XE, and the Apple IIe, right? So it has been compiled to all of those. There is, I guess that's the main game, but there are some other things. So the 8-bit OS, has a sort of like a desktop kind of metaphor that you can use on these compiled onto various platforms, and that's actually in the let's see, where is it in the beta release? That's the videos that sort of go like the current beta release 0.3.5 as of like a week ago. That's what's being demoed here. It's like playing music, playing and showing a graphic in all of these. So there's the Atari Lynx, the Auric, what is that? Atmos? I forget. Something like that. C64, Atari, Apple II. So it's interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I see updates to this on Facebook now and then. Mm-hmm. And I'm always a little curious, but I've never been curious enough to go in and download and try any of this stuff. It's always like, well, I always feel like, is this anything? I don't know yet. I can't tell if this really is anything.
Right.
Like, obviously, somebody's working on this. I'm not trying to put aside the hard work that someone's doing here, but I'm not quite there yet on, is this going to amount to something that is generally useful for many people? And maybe it will be. I can't really say yet.
So I think it is. It calls itself the Ultimate Game SDK for 80s computers. So it thinks of itself as being a game thing. Although this 8-bit OS that we were just talking about is more utility-like than game-like.
Right.
So the other thing that I don't remember talking about, or at least I don't remember thinking about before, is the 8-bit hub, which comes through, which is part of this project as well. And it turns out this is a little hardware device that you plug all of these computers into and provides things like networking and micro SD storage and joystick ports, which that is amazing.
That is totally amazing. Wait, what?
So even if you weren't totally sold on the usefulness of the 8-bit Unity project, this is a hardware device that you can plug into any of these computers and use the same joystick on whichever one you plug it into. It appears and provides networking. It looks like it's not unrelated to the FujiNet thing, right? In terms of like what it's trying to accomplish.
Functionality wise, seems to have some overlap there.
Yeah. So let's see. The Apple II can communicate with the game port, the Atari through the SIO port, Commodore through the user port, Auric through the printer port, Lynx through the Comlink port. I think that is really interesting.
Except at the moment it says the current firmware as of August only supports the Auric and the Lynx.
Okay. Yes.
So that pretty significantly limits the number of things you can. Well, it limits it to 2, and neither of the 2 I would have necessarily prioritized.
Well, my guess is the person who's writing this has those, right?
In which case, that was the correct choice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But so,
and it says it is fully open source. People can contribute to this, and
that kind of idea, though, if you could have a bunch of retro 8-bit computers and hardware, and then have a single monitor and joystick that you could use a button to switch back and forth between or something to play a bunch of different games. It would be pretty cool, but you would still have to get up and go over to that computer to load things up and whatever. Like if you really want that whole one joystick experience, tons of things, you're kind of better off just doing this in emulation, like having a computer that runs MAME or whatever and say, okay, now I can play all the games. So I don't know. I'm dubious. I have doob.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's what that means.
Well, we'll just assume so. Yeah. So it looks like it is when it is out. I don't think it is out. Or is it out?
Whatever. A version is out.
Okay.
There's been something downloadable for a while. Oh, you mean of the 8-bit hub? Sorry.
Yeah. Something is $129 plus 15 for the communication cable. So that's right. I guess you need an individual cable for each computer you want to plug it into. But nice. Well, anyway, I'm going to continue to investigate this because I think, I guess it's true that you could always use emulation, but under the assumption that you want to use actual hardware, it's kind of cool to have a single device that can connect to many of them and provide the things that you want on many of them, like SD card and networking. So
right.
Very cool. And I mean, I guess the idea too is that like if everyone has one, then suddenly there's a whole new there's a new target. That people who want to write new software could write network software that can assume that people have this if enough people have it. So
yeah, it's a bit of a chicken egg thing, but for
Yeah.
multiplayer games or whatever, like if there was an easy way to do that, that'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. So, oh yeah, no, and I totally forgot about the second half of this, which was that it reminded. So the 8-bit Unity thing reminded me of something called JoeyLib, which I don't know very much about. Have we talked about this before?
Not that I
Does that
can
sound
recall.
familiar? So
It's a library, right? I
yeah,
think we talked about this.
JoeyLib. Do you think?
Oh, I guess actually, that's probably with the libmans and Joey because it's kangaroo based. What's it called? JoeyLib.
Well, I think it might. I think the author may just be Australian.
Oh, so it is that kind of Joey. Okay.
But so I think
Look,
this
there's a
is
picture of a kangaroo.
kind of similar, but for Apple II GS and 16-bit machines. So this currently targets the Apple II GS, and then Windows, Mac, Linux machines, but plans to target Atari ST, Amiga, some Raspberry Pi stuff, some Android stuff. So it is. This is a more high-powered thing, but it is rooted in things you can do on the Apple II GS. And so I hear discussions of it. There's a sort of Apple II based Slack workspace that has a channel that's devoted to this. So I see discussions of this going by as it is being developed. But so this seems to be kind of like
I understand the appeal of saying I'm going to write it my game or whatever here, and it runs on a bunch of platforms. That's amazing. I mean, that's always been the dream of computers, like forever, since before there were computers, since there was two computers. Okay, it's the reason that Java was created, and it always sucks and it never works. And like we just don't seem to be able to accept that as a fundamental principle in computing. But the reality is, you target a lowest common denominator, and everybody ends up with a piece of software that looks like it wasn't really made for their computer. And you will never end up with something that is great on any of the platforms because you haven't really tailored it. I mean, as a Mac user, it is not unclear to me when I'm using software that was not made for Mac and was instead made to run on everything. I'm like, look, it's terrible. If I wanted stuff that looked like that, I wouldn't be using a Mac. And everybody thinks that of their own platform. And we all thought it back in the day too. So I think it's fundamentally impossible to make these things work well. I think it's going to be a rule. There's got to be a way to prove that. Some mathematics.
Yeah. I think I'm sort of hopeful that at the very least, what the work that's going into JoeyLib will lead to Apple II GS games that are good as Apple II GS games, and
because that seems to be the lowest common denominator of the target platforms. So yeah, but you end up with a bunch of people playing it on Mac, going like, why do you have these stupid limitations? Or people playing it on Windows, like why did you limit it to this color palette or this width? Oh, it's because it has to work on a 2GS too. It's like, why did you cripple my game for those 2GS people?
Yes. Like I can remember back in the Amiga days, like having some games that were mouse-based games that were very obviously ported from DOS games, and which meant that the mouse didn't move smoothly, which is a very key component. Like on the Amiga, the mouse pointer is a sprite and it always moves smoothly. And on these, it was like, no, it's like a herky-jerky, terrible DOS thing jerking around the screen. It's like, why? You have when it's here, like there's a mouse pointer built into the system. Why do you turn it off and draw your ugly mouse?
If you buy an Amiga game called Herky Jerky Terrible DOS Thing, I don't think you can really return it when you find out that it wasn't lying.
It's true. Fair enough. I should
have
known.
Welcome to Herky Jerky Terrible DOS Game. It's like, I think I've made a terrible mistake.
What have I done?
Mouse is like.
So anyway, now I guess so first we had we were talking about the what was it, the compiler, the procedurally generated compiler that we didn't quite understand. So hopefully somebody can come on and tell us like what that really is about. Then we trashed JoeyLib, and so maybe we can have somebody come on and say like why this actually is a good idea. We do respect your work, I promise.
We just don't We don't know if it's useful. We respect all the hard
I
work.
think we
that
just
people
don't
do on
understand
things,
it.
even if we don't understand it. It's still like it's not about saying things are terrible. Just saying we don't understand things. We're terrible. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know about
So-
you guys, but I am both herky and jerky. So
That's right.
like, get what you get.
Okay, let's see. So the let's see. Is it here? It is not here. Okay, so I guess that we ran out the end of the items of interest in the news list, and there is a so we had a section. There used to be a section back in the olden days of the upcoming show roundup. So things that were going to happen, and then it turned out that it was 2020 and everything got canceled. So, but relatively quickly, people did turn around and figure out how to do virtual events of various kinds, but we haven't really brought back this upcoming show roundup section. So I don't know what's coming up, but I did see an announcement of the World of Commodore 2020, which is coming up on December 5th. So that is actually in the future. So maybe it's worth mentioning. It's not far in the future, so it's worth mentioning soon. So if you're in Toronto or not, you can go to the World of Commodore 2020 because it is virtual. So 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Carrington time via Zoom, YouTube, and Discord.
And it's
cool.
Carrington time.
Yeah. Stop. But okay.
Collaborate and listen.
Right. And there are probably other shows that we should mention, but they hadn't come very recently across my peripheral vision. So write us if there are shows we should put in this, and hopefully we will get them in before they are over. And then I guess that's it. So we can now move to a word from our sponsor. Okay.
Sponsored by Joey Lib.
Exactly.
Whoops.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, and I guess I should probably just start opening new tabs here. I will open all the tabs in advance. So please wait while I do that.
Please wait. The yellow tab is for loading and unloading only.
Wait, this gift idea isn't the same we had last week?
I don't think
or was
so.
I looking ahead?
It was in the Discord channel.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
So
I get confused. That's right.
Because what was it last time? I don't know what it was last time. Oh, it was the inaccurate Commodore 64 patent thing.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there's so many. Oh, yeah. Actually, that was one other thing. Yeah, maybe I'll say that when we're not on break here. So stay tuned for a thing that I say.
How long is this Joey Lib ad anyway?
Boy,
my God.
Keeps going.
Yeah.
It's playing a different version of the ad for everything it emulates. Shouldn't one version of the ad work on all the podcasts?
I think so. Oh, look at that. I already had it open in a different tab. Okay.
Look at you. Professional.
Block. Okay. So just about there. Application window.
We should have a graphic overlay to put at this point of the show over the thing to say, like, now we're pretending that we are listening to an ad.
Or please go to the lobby or whatever.
Yeah.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Okay.
Let's go to the lobby.
There we go. Okay. I had very pleasingly put our show notes in instead. But,
that's a lot of tabs open, dude.
Yep. But I hope never to have to open another tab again.
You're
Good
done.
luck with that.
You loaded them all. That's the whole internet right there.
Okay. And we're back. So the host's retro computing gift idea this time is a Remax Styly floppy disk, 5,000 microampere hour. Actually, I don't know what that is.
Milli?
It's a battery. It's a battery shaped like a floppy disk, like a high density floppy disk. It's a fat floppy disk, but anyway, I think it looks pretty cool.
FAT32 to help with the thickness of the floppy.
Right. But I mean, like apart from the thickness, it just actually it looks like a stack of floppy disks, I suppose. But it is.
It's a 3D printed save icon for you young kids.
Yeah,
that's right. So it's pretty cool. I mean, like, these are pretty handy things to have around. I don't know if this is a good battery, but it is a $19 battery.
So I'll tell you if it's a good battery or not.
Yeah.
I feel like 5,000 is a good number for these things.
It's a round number.
I feel like a few years ago, they used to be the number used to be more like 2,000.
And now they've learned to put a bigger number on it because who can test these things?
That's right. Nobody knows.
I think 5. Yeah, right. Exactly. We actually, Carrington and I were just recently recording a different podcast, this chicken missile podcast, where we had to estimate things, like units of things, and this seems very familiar. Like 5,000 units, it seems good for whatever this is.
Some units of something. Don't ask me what units it's in. I'm just going to tell you the number 5,000. Yes, estimating, not necessarily my strong spot.
Right.
Come on, it was like how many hectares in the Vatican? Like, how am I supposed to know these things? Come on, whatever.
But anyway, so this looks good. I can't quite figure out if I can buy one, because it does say no more shipping method to the United States. So maybe we've been cut off.
No more shipping method.
But anyway, if it is possible to buy it, it costs $19. It looks very cool. It is a good, whatever stocking stuffer type.
No more
thing.
shipping method to Canada either. Well, somebody can buy it. It's not all necessarily about us.
That's right. Okay.
No more shipping method to Sweden either.
Well,
maybe sold out.
Yeah, I wonder if it's
they're all out of
quality,
ship.
affordable, fun, but inaccessible,
impurchasable.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a neat idea. Someday it'll come back. I don't quite understand what this design is, but anyway, okay. So, when you're done buying that, if you can buy that, if you can't buy that, then all the more money to spend on eBay. So, Carrington, you can fill us in on what things to purchase on eBay.
Oh, sure. Okay, I'm sharing a screen. My first choice is a vintage Atari 410 cassette player. So it's a program recorder. Now, I am not very familiar with these, and this particular one comes in a box, and it's $45.50. I didn't pick this because of that, but it's a nicely boxed one. So you get a box, you get the recorder, you get all the stuff. It looks nice. It probably works as well as probably any cassette recorder ever did work, which is, not very. But the reason I picked this one actually was just as a reminder to people looking for stuff that this cassette program recorder, for shipping out of Canada, by the way, go Canada, is under Consumer Electronics Vintage Cassette decks. So this isn't in the vintage computer section or computer section at all on eBay. This is something being sold as a cassette thing, even though they know it's Atari. But like we talked about at the beginning, people don't know stuff and old computers and things. So increasingly it's the case, old computer stuff gets put all over the place in eBay. So it's a reminder that if you're searching for things, don't necessarily search for stuff only in the vintage computer section. People just get stuff and go, this box says this, it's got the word Atari on it. It could be anywhere. And sometimes, not necessarily in this case, but sometimes you can find things cheaper, or you're not going to have a whole bunch of bidders on it. If you find it completely misfiled. And you can always search by title. So if you search for the words Atari and cassette, you'll find this, but only if you search broadly enough to be searching stereo equipment.
Right.
So that was it was just a reminder that you can find old computer stuff sometimes cheaper in other places. So that's my first choice. I in this case, I don't know if this is actually a bargain. I don't know if $45.50 for a boxed one of these is good, terrible. It is what it is. You get what you get. This is one of the first episodes in a while where I'm not trying to sell Paul stuff. Sorry, Paul. None of this.
It's okay.
Disappoints.
But I do. Well, actually, I mean, Jack, you might know like what likely conditions are of these, but it does seem to me like having the box and all that insert stuff. This seems like, I don't know if this is the going rate, but this would feel worth it to me.
Yeah, I think British Heritage Jigsaw Puzzles Volume 2. And Anne Hathaway's Cottage. That'd be the original Anne Hathaway, people. The Shakespeare one, not the current one. I don't think her cottage was big for the Atari. I don't know.
No, but I think like the box looks like it's in nice condition and stuff. People like that kind of thing. like Karen said, hard to know if it works, but even if it doesn't work, these things tend to be fixable. I think it's the elastic drive band that breaks and that's replaceable, and there may be some other gears and whatnot that can be replaced with 3D printed, that kind of thing. So, but it's probably mostly just the elastic band. It may just work as it is. So I think someone will probably buy it at this price, or similar. But shipping's kind of a lot, though.
If you're in Canada, actually no, it's $35 for me too, so it is a lot. Yeah. It's what it is.
Yep. Yeah, I think the another thing that sometimes goes on these is, and I forget, I don't know what you call it, but it's the rubber circle thing that I think it's the rubber. I think that thing is the thing that touches the capstan. I don't think it is the capstan, but anyway, it's a thing that's made of material that could turn to goop, and so that might have to be replaced. I think that's just sort of like a general cassette issue. But
anyway, that's choice number 1. Next, I've got for you guys this thing, which is it caught my eye because I don't know this game. So it's for the old Apple Mac, comes with a whole bunch of floppy disks, and it's Heart of China, which is supposedly an adventure game on big old stack of floppies. And I don't know this adventure game, but I love old adventure games, and it's $30 buy it now. But what caught my eye is because it's by Dynamix. And I like Dynamix because they made Stellar 7. They were a game developer, and I don't know what else they did, but I know it as the Stellar 7 game developer. And I loved Stellar 7 for the Apple II. I just adored that game. And then it was published by other people. And so they made this game, and it was published by Sierra. So it's a Sierra adventure game that I don't know. It's not complete. You get the instructions and the cards and stuff, but I don't think it comes with the box, and it's $30. But it caught my eye because I don't know the game. So I don't know how frequently this comes up, and it's a game I'd never heard of, and I love old adventure games. So do you guys know this game?
Nope, not at all. Never heard of it.
Yeah, once we get into Mac games, I think it's increasingly likely that I will not have heard of one of them.
Right.
But no, I had not heard of this.
Yeah. But I love Stellar 7. Love Stellar 7. I don't know if you guys know, but it's a space game. It's done in vector style, like vector tanks and going to shoot things from the Apple II, and it's amazing. It's one of my favorite Apple II games. So that's the only reason I know this developer is it's the Stellar 7 developer, and apparently went on to make adventure games for the Apple II. So that was my second choice because I thought it was neat because of Dynamix. And then my third one is one, ironically, I'm going to say is a good bargain, although nothing really is a good bargain on eBay. So it's kind of odd to say that. And it's also very expensive, $85 for a game, but it's one of the all-time great games. It's Serpentine, which is a snake game for Apple II, published by Broderbund, amazingly executed, like just a phenomenally good game. It's a game everybody I knew had it, but it was only the last couple of years I realized it came packaged and what it would look like, because this thing was pirated like crazy. So it's pretty rare you get a complete version, and this is a still sealed version. So while it's expensive, $85 is a lot for a game that came in a cardboard folder and has a floppy disk in it. That's a lot of money to pay for that. So I don't think it's actually worth it. But if you are a collector of these things, this is as low as I'm going to see this thing go. Like, it's kind of weird that it'd be $85 buy it now for a sealed Serpentine. So maybe this person has a bunch of them and they know they're about to flood the market with them or something. But normally I would expect this thing to be twice that in a sealed copy. So if you're a collector of these, this is one to get, and then you can open it up because all things should be open. I love this game. I love this game.
I mean, I guess the nice thing about having it be shrink wrapped, like one of the things that would lead me to get this is that you can trust that the inside is, as good as it's going to be. If you're going to scan it or whatever, it's as well preserved as you can hope for.
But you don't know that it's going to be perfect, though, because a lot of times glue is going to have seeped through the label on a lot of things. But old Infocom games, definitely, even if they were still new in box, the disc can look old and be cruddy and not work or whatever. But if you are simply collecting to collect, like collecting to possess the games or whatever, this is quite a collectible thing. Like, it's still sealed Serpentine. It's not going to come up much. And it's a great game. It's a terrific game. And here's a sealed version, $85. So I think it's a good price for what it is, but I think what it is obscenely priced, and software shouldn't cost this much. So. is what it is. But there you go. Those are my 3 choices.
Cool.
I'm trying to remember now which. So I'm pretty sure that if you have a Apple IIc Plus and you bought this, you would be disappointed when you tried to boot it because it wouldn't work. It might even not work on an Apple.
Well, isn't it a 5 isn't it a 5 1/4 inch?
It is a 5 1/4 inch, but
you mean if you had an external drive for the IIc Plus?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm trying to find the date on here, but so copyright 1982. So yeah, even maybe the Platinum 2E. The problem with these is basically that the copy protection didn't know about these later computers, right? So it works fine on an Apple II Plus, but it'll do a ROM check, and if it doesn't recognize your ROM, it'll think, oh, you were trying to pirate me, and if you have like a TC Plus. So the reason I know this is because there was one year at Kansas Fest where there was kind of like a cracking workshop. And so this was the thing I brought to do that with, because I wanted to see if I could get it to boot on the TC Plus, because it would normally it would just it would basically just say I don't know what it would do. I think it does something. It clears memory and puts a little R, I think, in the corner. Maybe it's an M.
Well, but, here's the thing about that. I just Googled, and broderbund.com is still the site, claiming to be like the great place for great software for 30 years or whatever. Still exists, same logo, same company. And the back of this game clearly says this program is fully guaranteed. If it ever fails to boot, return the original disk to Broderbund software for a free replacement. I think they should have to stand by that warranty. So if you've got this game and it doesn't boot on your 2C Plus, you should give them a shout and say, I want a new version. There's no time limit on $5 though. Well, I'm willing to pay the $5.
Okay. Right.
So I think that shouldn't be an issue. I think people should call and say they want their updated version. I think that's a way to get back at these companies who use these awful DRM things. Is make them stand by their warranties. They still exist. Let's bring down Broderbund.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stick it to the man.
Seize the means of software production.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to put. So this is Michael's pick. Michael is not here. Although Michael is about to go talk to, what is the guy's name now? I forgot already. The guy from SSG. There's a, what is his name? There's a very famous strategic game developer that is behind the company SSG, I believe. And Michael's talking to him instead of talking to us. But anyway.
Okay.
I would make that same decision.
Yeah. But he did send a eBay pick, and it is a PDP 1145 front panel. So it's only the front panel, but it's the important part of the PDP, you might say. It has a little switches, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape, actually. So if you wanted to back it with a Raspberry Pi or something, I guess there's a couple little scratches on it. Looks quite nice though. The current bid is $150. The reserve is not met, so who knows what they're actually looking for. My guess is they're looking for more than 150 for one thing. But,
apparently.
Yeah. But it's coming out of Denver, Colorado. So if you are looking for such a thing, you have 7 days left.
As of this recording.
Yes.
If you're listening to this in the shower.
Yes. 2 weeks
jump
ago.
on your computer immediately.
Yeah. No, actually, there's a chance that people will be hearing this sometime within a week. Because
you've gotten fast, dude.
My backlog is now past. So I haven't actually, as we were recording it, I haven't actually posted the previous episode, but I'm about to. So
what's fun about that is you're getting faster and faster and faster. So the time difference between when we record and when things come out has gotten so short that soon I'll be able to listen to the episodes before we record them, which will make making my notes so much easier. So I can just listen to what I picked for eBay and then just say the same thing again, which will be great. So look forward to that.
All right. Anytime now. But okay, let's see. So I had some things. What are the things that I had?
What are you going to sell to yourself?
The first thing I have is and some of this is relatively Apple centric, but so it goes. It's a jigsaw puzzle of an Apple II. It actually says Apple II Plus, I guess, on the jigsaw puzzle. This is something that Apple sold, and it's sort of like, don't know, it had this little gift catalog of stuff, and one of the things it had was a jigsaw puzzle of an Apple II with sort of like a, I don't know, it's almost like it's as if part of it was transparent, so you can kind of see the chips and things inside. The cool thing about this is that it's missing a piece, so you will never be able to finish it. But these things are actually relatively collectible and rare. So even missing the piece, I think this is probably something some people would want. I've
wanted one. My girlfriend and I will every once in a while sit down and like do a jigsaw puzzle together or whatever, like a lazy Sunday. And I would love to do this one because you'd knock it out really fast. It's 500 pieces. Well, 499 pieces in this case.
Exactly.
But these things are always so expensive for what they are. I just want to one-time assemble. Someone's got to have one and just bring it to Kansas Fest so I can just put it together and I'm done with it. It's that kind of thing I want to do a bunch.
And, of course, this is the kind of thing that you could just create, right? I mean, like in modern times. I think I will be able to edit out the little bing of the message. How annoying. Anyway, but yeah, and so in the auction they actually have a picture of the gift catalog page that has the puzzle in it, the original puzzle. With this one has all the pieces. In fact, you might be able to.
I was just gonna say, can you find the piece and use that, blow that up, and like put that in from the catalog? That should be pretty cool.
That is a good idea. Carrington has had a good idea.
Finally, 10 years into the show. Whew, I knew it would happen eventually.
Another thing that is on the same page is it's a, I don't know what do you call these things? Oh, actually, if I zoomed in, I could probably see.
A latch hook rug kit.
Yeah, that's okay. Latch hook. That's the word I was trying to remember.
Latch hook. Welcome to the 1970s. I'm going to sit down with my Jello with various floating things in it on my shag carpet, and I'm going to make a latch hook rug and some crocheted flower pot holders. I actually would like to do all of that, to be honest.
Yeah. It all sounds
I say that with mockery, but I think that would be a really fun way to spend a day.
Yeah. So I think I've seen a couple of those, like, I don't think they sold very many of those little latch hook rug things, with basically you make the Apple logo. But it does seem pretty cool, and I would not mind having one. But anyway,
so I would want to get one that wasn't put together. I don't want to have the thing. I'd want to do it. I want to go to Kansas Fest and that'd be a great Kansas Fest. See, every once in a while they have like soldering times. So everyone gets together and solder. Everyone can get together and do latch hook.
I bet it's really not that. I mean, like, basically it's the pattern and then a plastic, waffle or whatever it is that you make.
I bet Melissa Barron could teach us all to do latch hook, and then she would have things. She is the kind of person who will come to this and say, and now you can, if you don't want to step up to a full loom, then here's a way to do this.
Right.
I remember my sister having some of these back in the 70s, and I remember trying it, and I was a little kid, and it was totally doable and fine. It was quite easy to do. It's time consuming, but it's pretty easy and it's fun. Like when you can make something that you want to make, like an Apple logo, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it does seem like it's like it makes you feel like you're knitting, but without the hard part.
You're not, right.
And without the risk, right? Because I think knitting always involves a certain amount of like dropping a stitch or whatever it is that
and this is fairly foolproof. And I don't know if this one has, but the ones that I remember my sister having when I was a kid were like that plastic waffle that you're latching onto. It actually had the colors printed on it, like silkscreen on it, so you could see at every point what the color was you're supposed to put at that spot.
Yeah,
paint by numbers.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're asking a lot for this, even with the missing piece. It's $250, $249 starting bid.
It'd be $250 if it had that piece.
That's right.
But,
you could make an offer. I think at least up until somebody bids that. But okay, let's see what else. I labeled this one cautionary tale and buying things for collectors. But so this is an auction that says working vintage Apple IIc disk drive joystick printer monitor software. And then it shows a picture of an Apple IIe. I actually can imagine that people who don't know what they're looking at could look at the logo of an Apple IIe, and the stylized E, you could almost believe that's a C, right? I mean, like, because it is open, right? I mean, like it's open like a C would be. If you read the description, it says, "Sorry, folks. Thanks for all your comments. It made a mistake. It is an Apple IIe." Didn't change the auction title, but just put in the notes. And so what it is, I purchased this for someone who collects vintage computers as a gift. But let's just say that did not work out. So a suggestion, probably not to anyone who's actually listening to this now, but a suggestion to make to anyone buying gifts for anyone who's listening to this now. It's never a good idea to, to try to buy something for someone who collects those things, because you will not know what is junk and what is not junk, what is rare and what is not rare. And my guess is what happened is this person thought, oh, you like old computers, with your Sinclair collection or whatever.
Right.
or your, whatever 15 already existing Apple IIe setups. So they bought someone perhaps nicely on a little, Apple IIe. And this looks like, it actually looks like one of the early Apple IIes with the white keyboard lettering and stuff. But apparently that person did not want it. And, the way the auction is written actually does sort of suggest didn't want it in kind of violent fashion.
Right.
But
let's just say it didn't work out.
Yeah. Also,
so this may have been a relationship ending attempted gift.
It does seem like that, does it not?
This was the end of something really bitter happened.
The other thing about this auction, though, is that
it's actually well priced.
Very weird. Yeah, it's 226 first bid, and it appears to come with a lot of stuff. I mean, so it comes with an Apple IIe. It comes with a monitor stand, which actually those by themselves are
that's what I was going to say. The monitor stand is a big chunk of the value here, and it comes with a box 2 Apple joystick, and those go for a bunch. You could pay $250 on those things.
Yeah.
So
there's a disc 2, and
you'd only know this if you look through the photos and say, "Hey, that's a disc 2 in the background there with little footprint stickers on it."
Yeah, Super Serial Card box. Some floppies, but the photography here is very strange because they took
hard to look at.
They took a photo of everything laid out on a table, but then I don't know, maybe the table revealed too much about their location or something like that, so they cut out everything except just like the outlines around the actual things that are for sale. Yeah, maybe they thought you would think,
and they didn't outline it very well. It's cut in the middle of things.
Pretty bad.
It's like, yeah.
And actually, this thing, what is this? So, I'm looking on the. Apparently, what they did was, they just used the cutout tool in Photoshop or whatever. But it seems like they left the logo on a binder. So this binder shows up somewhat in a different photo. And I remember trying to figure out what was that thing. So it's this. Okay, so I gotta remind myself that this is an audio podcast. Yeah, I don't know what that is. There's a box of something, and they left part of the logo on an earlier photo, but it's still impossible to understand what it is. There's some books, including a relatively rare book called Intimate Instructions in Integer Basic, which is like a Integer Basic programming book.
And a couple of really good books. It's got the assembly lines version that I like, the comb bound one. That is the best version of that book, I think, because it lays flat. Like if you're going to learn assembly, that's the book to get, and that is the version of the book to get. And the new version of it, we can get through Chris Torrance, like they republished that book in a modern version, but it was like perfect binding or whatever, which is fine, but doesn't work as well if you want as a programming manual. And now you can get it again as the comb bound one. So but I mean, this presumably is a vintage original one, and that's a really good programming manual. And it's got the Apple Graphics and Arcade Game Design book, which is one of the great arcade game programming things for the Apple II. So it's actually like a good collection. It's got some good stuff in it. It's too bad it was so violently rejected by the person who bought it.
Yeah, I know.
I feel bad.
But anyway, so so this is it actually probably isn't such a bad auction if you don't have these things and want them, and you might want them, but also don't try to second guess what a collector needs, because you're going to be wrong. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is not cheap, but these almost never come up. This is a workstation card for an Apple II.
Ooh,
so,
cool.
Yeah, so it's basically it's an AppleTalk card. An AppleTalk network card that you can actually boot your Apple II like a 2E off of the network with this. So
yeah, it's not cheap, but this is one of the good cards. Like if you're going to put cards in an old Apple II, this is one of the ones to get. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I never had one. In fact, I don't have a vintage Apple II anymore, but this is one of the cards I wanted to get, but I never could.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're hard to come by, but and they're complicated too. I mean, you can sort of see that like it's got like a lot of brain on that card. And the other thing too, so there's a there's a little box that has some, I don't know what they are, 5 DIN 5 plugs on them. I don't know, but
yeah,
anyway, whatever Apple Talk
Mini
is.
DIN 5, whatever the Apple Talk, Mini DIN 5, not 9, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so you can occasionally find these without that box. I think I have 2 of them, one with a box and one without that box. And so at some point I want to try to figure out a way to make the cable that works with that. But anyway, they're it's too bad that they're so hard to get, because they're a really kind of cool way to connect your Apple II to the outside world. You can like connect to like I had a file sharing running on a Mac, like sharing a folder that the Apple II could see. That was pretty cool. Anyway, but this is a buy it now of 268. It also comes with incidentally also comes with essentially a Disk 2 controller. It's a clone controller, but those aren't hard to get. It's the workstation card. So 268 is not a bargain, but they're rare. So
okay, so I think it's actually 8-pin Mini DIN 8. I want to correct myself before we get a ton of email for Apple Talk. That's my final answer, 8.
Okay.
But my main thing I want to come in with, Sorcerer Stan tells us that on that last listing, the really weird one, that same Stellar has like another listing for basically the same thing at $400, and their completed listings show a bunch of copies of the same thing. So maybe there's something funky going on with that seller.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so
they might just not know eBay any better than they know buying things for their partner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or Photoshop. But yeah, I think that is interesting. So it does seem like this person doesn't know how to use eBay and has tried to list it has accidentally listed it twice. So definitely bid on the 200 one and not the 400 one, I guess. But and there was for a while it was a buy it now for 350. Yeah, this really has not been selling for some time.
And they've got 100% positive feedback, but only 15 things. So they probably are new to eBay, and then you kind of understand that people don't really know how it works. I've never sold anything on eBay, so I also probably would have no idea how to do this properly.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so let's see the next thing. This I think is very interesting. The existence of this is interesting. This is a what is it called again? I wrote it down here. Sprite logo. This is a card that goes with Sprite logo for the Apple II. And
that's a version of logo like the programming language?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I don't know Sprite logo.
And it has on it this chip that we talk about occasionally. That is it's the graphics chip, I think, from the TI-99. It's the TMS 9981. I think I can almost read that on the screen there. So it's a Sprite chip.
9918.
9918. Okay. But basically this is a card with a Sprite chip on it that logo can talk to. So and it's very rare. This particular card has a starting bid of $500, and that's, I mean, I suppose that's probably not inappropriate. But it's okay. So it has and the card also has a composite out. So if you want to learn something about this, Peter Newbar has presented some stuff about this at Kansas Fest and has written some stuff up about this on his blog. So there's LCSI, the logo people, they released Sprite logo for the Apple II, and he had a copy and sort of talked a bit about it. So he has talked about this card and how it works, and essentially what that this is a like how this goes together. He had he did an unboxing, and also sort of he called it a boxing, but I mean, like, he showed what the back of the box looked like. This is super rare. I mean, like, there really are not many of these, but so in this box was that card, and it would be even better to have this box with that card. I mean, the card by itself is, you can use the software that Peter imaged, I guess, to run the card. But so it's interesting.
You can't run it without the card, presumably, though, like to run the software.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it'll. Well, I mean, it's probably just sort of regular logo, but enhanced to talk to this card. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that it exists, and if you didn't know that it existed, you might have an enjoyable time reading Peter's blog about like the things that it does. Peter is kind of a logo expert, so. And he did actually talk. So part of the reason that I remembered this is that he actually did a talk at Kansas Fest not too long ago, which we mentioned on the RCR a couple times ago, about sort of a modern version of this card, this chip. What is it called? And we said it then. F18A, that's what it's called. I knew eventually if I just sat there quietly, it would come to me. So it's the F18A chip, which I think is not currently available, but is undergoing revisions and should be available again. But it's supposed to be a drop-in replacement for this, and it's possible that you can put one of these on a card and put it in your Apple II, and quite likely do much of what this card does. I mean, like, so the heart of the card is this chip. Right. That the F18A is replacing. So, anyway, I think I have nothing more to say about that. Did anyone want to say anything further about that?
No, but I agree that he's the person I first think of when you talk about logo.
Yeah,
I immediately think Peter Neubauer. If I had questions about logo, I'd be going to him about
it. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So next thing, I thought this was interesting. There was a time when I would have jumped on this as being very exciting to see. The only reason I'm not is because I have one of these now. So
yeah, you blogged about this.
Yeah.
Right? Am I remembering that correctly? Because you pulled the audio off it forever ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I read your stuff. See.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, here it is. So in June 2013, I basically I had gotten a copy of this, and I was trying to figure out what the background is on this. It was a game that was produced in Japan and sold. It was sold in a couple of different ways. Eventually, it became something that Creative Computing released, and I think it's the Creative Computing version of this. In fact, won one of the first like best software of all time contests in Soft Talk magazine. So like, or maybe it wasn't the best software of all time up to that point, which was 1982 or something. I think
not what all time means, folks, but okay.
Yeah. But so I was kind of curious about it because there was this. I was curious about just basically how things in Japan are sold, I think, ultimately. And I have since then gotten a couple of versions of this that have, I have a version of this on disc as well that had the same stamp. And so Cosmo Software was, I guess, a way that this was marketed to the US from Japan, and then Creative Computing got a hold of the license and then sold it themselves. So one of the things about it is a super accurate Space Invaders game. Like, it is the most like playing the arcade game that you can find on the Apple II. So if you're interested in that, you can bid on this. Starting bid is $25. It's sort of a legitimately historical, sort of rare tape. So that's all I had to say about that. I think. Nice. And I think maybe I'll skip the next one because it's not that big of a thing. But the last one I'll mention is something that Ian sent a link to, and I think this is it's just kind of cool. It is a Bunker Ramo, what is it, Telequote 3 terminal. And it is from the olden days of stock trading.
Is that a screen in the top left corner?
It is. Yes.
That tiny, teeny little thing?
Yeah. And
Love it.
And it shows, let's see. Yeah, I mean, so they don't show it on, and who knows if it works. It really does look like, it looks like the 1970s or 1960s even, with the
40s. It looks super old.
Yeah.
It looks really old. Yeah.
And so this actually is kind of nothing. This is sort of a CRT and a keyboard. It is a piece of a larger system that is not included with this. So and somebody has bid $300 on it though already. So apparently it is worth $300 to somebody. But and it really does. I mean, it does look like. So the company name is Bunker Ramo, but it really looks like something you would find in a bunker, right? Bunker is somebody's name, but right. But it somehow seems very fitting. So this is so let's see if Bunker Ramo. They are, they eventually this system, the telequote, eventually became kind of like part of what became NASDAQ, right? So it does have a future. And in fact, actually, I think Bunker Ramo themselves, so it says purchased by Allied Signal in 1981, but I think they actually became part of TRW, which I know of as like the credit reporting agency, but they also like made space stuff. And eventually it became part of Honeywell. So this is a very long bygone thing, but and so there's somebody on the Vintage Computer Federation forums, so on vcfed.org/forum/forum.php. There's somebody talked about back in 2015 getting a hold of one of these and sort of like talking through what these are. So the Telequote 3 units were first installed in 1964. Over 13,000 are now in use, now being in 1968. They have a 3-inch CRT tube and can display up to 700 characters per second. So, and there's actually some photos. I guess you have to be logged in order to see the photos. But if you log in, you can see photos of the thing going, and there's some information from the user manuals and stuff in there. So it's pretty interesting. It shows not very many characters at one time, and I think the other thing that Bunker Ramo is sort of famous for is getting into a dispute with Western Union about the legality of transmitting data. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but at any rate, they're behind some kind of large legal ruling referred to as Computer 1. So
I found an ad
for
Bunker Ramo on a place, vintageadbrowser.com. So you go there and you scroll down in the second row is an ad that says it's for non-computer types who don't type too well in italics. So Bunker Ramo, it's for you non-computer traders.
That's right. And you can almost see, let's see, and I've zoomed it off the screen, but
there's an anchor tattoo on the person's back of their hand.
That's it. Those are the people you expect not to be able to type too well.
Right. And they're day traders. This was used for trade. Like, how is this person is like fresh off the sea? Me bunko. Oh, bunko. That's where it comes from. Me bunko. I got me mum tattoo and we got to make some trades. I love it. I have no idea who the market for these things was, but I love it.
Well,
anyway, so if you think that is cool, you have to outbid somebody who thought it was at least $300 worth of cool. But I don't know. I think it's cool. I'm not going to get it though. I guess we've stopped doing that now, right?
Yes. Oh well. Someday.
And I see that.
But hold on. I thought you did buy something that Is it the case that you got things from a couple episodes ago? That mouse? Did you end up getting that mouse?
I did. Yeah, I did. So you succeeded. I got
sold Paul a thing.
Not a mouse. Yeah, the Hypertronic 91 key thing.
Have you received it yet?
Well, in some sense, the package was delivered, but I am not in the place where it was delivered to.
So I'm dying to know how correct I am about what that thing does and how it's used. So I'm interested. Yeah. I'm very interested.
Yeah, I am quite quite curious to know. So I will report back once I know.
Cool.
So I bought 2 because I thought there was maybe just a slight chance that there was a listing error, and like if by buying 2 I got both versions, then it will have been worth it. Otherwise, I will have an extra one. But I mean, the cool thing is that it has the package and it has the sort of like description of what the macros are on the back.
Cool.
So, and then there's one last thing that I seem to have put in here, which is a vintage DEC H500 computer lab, which is, I sort of feel like we talked about this before.
We've talked about this kind of thing before, but I don't know about this particular one.
Yeah. So, and the reason, well, I mean, like, so I do know that we talked about it before, because it was, or at least I think this is what, so it's possible that there was a typo somewhere in either what I copied or what was put in there before, but I think this was in episode 1 of the Retro Computing Roundtable. So there's, and it's still available.
Still for sale.
Maybe it's not this actual one, but it's a DEC trainer of some kind. It's a digital trainer, digital computer lab that has sort of PDP like switches and little places that you can plug in, little wires and light up little things, I think.
Yeah, what's fun about this kind of trainer, like a lot of these trainers, you just use switches or whatever to configure them to learn logic, to learn computers. And this is the kind where you're going to have wires with little plugs, like an old-fashioned telephone switch thing, like, oh, please hold for Mrs. Smith. And you put the things. Yeah. So this would be fun to use because you'd be plugging wires all over the place to jump between stuff to make AND gates and OR gates and that sort of thing. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty neat to have made in Canada.
Yeah.
Serial number 2004.
And yet doesn't ship to Canada. Hey, come on, man, bring it back. Bring it home.
It's interesting because digital itself, I think, was a Boston area thing. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of neat to bring that back up, that it showed up. Oh, also another thing that was mentioned in RCR2. So in episode 1 of the Retro Computing Roundtable, there were many eBay auctions. So there was a IBM 5150 and Super Pet and this DEC trainer. He's got 3700 and Altair 8800, and
wonder if I can guess what my choice was. Wonder what I picked. Wonder if it's that Heathkit, because I thought I had it was the Heathkit, and I didn't have a Heathkit. Maybe is that the Heathkit I had? Like, now that I can't remember what the heck Heathkit I had, I wonder if it turns out that that's the one. Oh, I forget so many things. That'd be great.
It was a Heathkit 3700. And ETW 3567, if that is meaningful to you.
It isn't. And of course, the auction's expired. So now I have no idea if I saw that. Would I go, yeah, that's the one I had? I don't know.
Yeah. The 3567 was some sort of like, I think it was some sort of a display thing that you could set it in. But, like it had a display is what I mean. It wasn't for display. But, and in episode 2, David says something along the lines of, from now on, there are just going to be 4 eBay auctions. That was too many. So,
and then we kicked David off the show.
Yeah, and the eBay auctions. Yeah, but anyway, and actually also in the second episode, the results from the first episode's eBay auctions were reviewed, which I think might be sort of interesting. But that seems like that adds another hour.
Yeah. And also you have to get the next show out twice. We have to get the show out. The first one has to come out before those things are for sale, and the next one after those. So
yeah. Yep. Anyway, okay. So I think that was the reason that I put this in my eBay list, was that it was in the first episode, and I thought that was kind of cool. However, I think that is it for the eBay auctions now.
Oh.
So that's fine. My recording says it's been recording for 2 hours and 12 minutes. So even though I understand that that's a little more than we've actually been on YouTube. Yeah. So, okay. So I guess we can move to closing discussions. And I don't know, Carrington, do you have any closing thoughts?
I bought a vintage computer. Like the guy who's gone all digital. I wanted to play a couple of old games, and a a computer came up on eBay that I've coveted for ages, and it came up super cheap. So I actually picked up so I've gone the opposite of minimalism, and I picked up a vintage computer that's been behind me the entire time in this episode. Have any of you spotted it?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very vintage.
Vintage for me. So I bought an iMac G4. So I wanted to play some old games. So I boxed a little 15-inch monitor iMac G4. I have coveted this computer for a while. There's a particular version of it that I wanted, the one that can boot to Mac OS 9. Like there was two versions, the 800 megahertz 15-inch, and the second one can only boot and be like a really slow OS 10 computer. So I want it to be a moderately slow OS 9 computer. So yeah, I've got a bunch of CD-ROM games I want to play. I don't have any of those games. That's how it begins, man. Now I have a computer, now I got to get some games. I'm already kind of regretting the purchase.
Yes.
I don't consider it a forever thing. This is a thing I want to bring in, play with, and then pass on. So almost certainly this box, because it's a boxed one. It's really nice. It's with the speakers. It's all fully in box. This will probably make an appearance in the Kansas Fest giveaway at some point, because I don't see myself long-term having it, but I've wanted to play these games for a while. So I picked up an iMac G4 shipped from Canada. So yeah.
Well, those things are so cute, though.
They're adorable. I love it. I love the form factor so much. I mean, I can see how Apple painted themselves in a corner with it, because it has that monitor on the neck. And once you get into 20-inch and bigger screens, it's just like, I can't support that. So it wasn't a forward-thinking design. But if you stick with the 17 and the 15-inch monitor, it's adorable and lovely. It's like the Pixar computer. It's one of my favorite Mac physical design. So it's not the greatest of old Mac computers. Like there's G4s that will run rings around it. But for me, it's the aesthetic. If it's going to sit on my desk for a couple of months, then I wanted this one. So I've gone non-emulation. Look at me.
Nice. I love the desktop footprint of those things. It's just a little circle. And then it's like full computer sprouting from this thing. It's like a
Paul, you have a bunch of these, right? Like on a display. We talked about the head should move around and watch people. How many iMacs do you have of this?
I don't know. I think it's I don't know. It's like 9 or something like that. I don't know. Somewhere in that area. Nice. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say that the reason I have so many of those is that I made the error of going to a recycler, like an electronics recycler. And while I was there on the floor, there was like this little like group of them, and it was just too sad, because they were going to like be destroyed, right? I mean, like so I'm like, well, I can't. They're just looking at me sadly.
Oh,
I cannot let them. So I mean, I don't know. They were probably like $10 each or something. I mean, it was probably like it was probably relatively cheap to get them.
Right.
But I also,
now you have to
felt
them.
like I was compelled to get them because I was there.
They're the Rescue Max.
Yeah,
exactly.
Rescue Max. That's lovely. Yeah, and what's nice about this is, like, I have owned tons of computers, tons of old Macs, and I have gone back and bought retro computers, mostly through nostalgia. But this is a model that I never had. I never owned one of these things. So it's actually my first experience. I had one in my possession for a very short time when a friend of mine who worked at Apple at the time that these were new got one for herself, but had to get one in like a circuitous route because she wasn't supposed to be purchasing one for herself with this particular discount she was using or something. So I won't use her name just in case. Apple has long memories. And so she had me make the purchase for her and then just pay me back. So one of these in a box sat in my closet for like 2 weeks, and then I handed it to her. But that's the closest I've ever come to one of those. Is I physically held one of the boxes before. And so when I lift it up, I'm like, oh yes, I remember this part, but everything else will be new.
Yeah, I think so. My recollection of them is that so they, the part of the cuteness of them is that they have the CD drive that sticks out like as if it was sticking its tongue out at you, right? But that also makes it very low to the ground. So like you have to kind of keep clearance in front of the thing.
I suspect a lot of people knocked over glasses of things onto the keyboards by ejecting a CD that had blunked.
Yeah. And like I'm trying to think. It seems to me like now that I think about the iMac, the colorful gumdrop type,
which also I love very much.
Yeah. But at least the first ones, they did have a tray, I think, didn't they?
The first ones had a tray. Yeah, you guys talked about it recently. And then they went to the slot loader for the special edition, like the late model, like the 400 megahertz ones or whatever.
And I was thinking that should also have been like for some reason I remember the G4 one as having an inconveniently low CD-ROM eject thing, and not the G3.
Well,
but I don't know why.
the G3, the colorful ones,
taller.
also had that little flip up foot pad in the front.
Yeah.
So maybe you always had yours up. So it was like launching the CDs into space or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've always wanted to have one of these. Well, not always, but I've of recent, the last year or so, wanted one. But they're always very expensive on eBay, and I can never be sure. Because you look at the two ones, and I wanted the one that can boot OS 9, and they look the same port, same look, same everything. And you need a clear photo of the bottom of it to say, is it like the model number that starts with 8 versus the model number that starts with 9? But in this case, it was an eBay listing that showed the serial number of the computer, and I could go online and you could do serial number lookups, and it told me, this is this model. I'm like, it's the one I want, finally. So I could just purchase it, knowing, hopefully, I got the one that will actually do what I want, which is play a couple of old games. So.
That is interesting. So like I should go through the ones that I have and see if like any of the ones are the good kind or the bad kind or whatever.
I don't think the other ones are a bad kind. Like technically the ones that can only boot in OS 10 should be the better one because they're a year later, the 2002 or whatever it is. But I specifically want to run like OS 9 games that maybe would like this gives me both options, and I'd much rather. I'm looking at OS 10 right now. Like I want to have a computer that runs a different operating system. So OS 9 menus that don't stick down. I will learn to hate it very quickly, I'm sure, but we will see. Hopefully, I get at least one game out of it.
That is interesting. You know, OS 10 has. How long has that been around? OS 10 is like 20 years old or something, right?
Yeah, something like that. Forever. Oh yeah, because you can like this 2002 model of this only could boot to OS 10. It had been around long enough, they were forcing you to upgrade to it. So it is an old operating system.
Yeah, OS 10 came out in 2000 or 2001. I don't remember exactly.
Holy cow, that's even earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember running the beta on that for a while, the aqua lickable stuff that came after that. That was a dog slow operating system, man.
But yeah, so now we made it to 11, 20 years later.
That's
great.
I'm excited about them though. I'm excited about the new Macs, like the Apple Silicon things.
Oh yeah, the M1
not retro, but I'm keen, man. I'm very tempted to pick up one of the new Mac Minis running that.
Yep.
Yeah,
me too.
That's very tempting. That's a very tempting computer.
I think I'm about due for a new work laptop because the one I've had for almost 4 years.
Yeah,
and I of course.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's
I was just lamenting the fact that I just got a new one. So
yeah, but you want to have like the last really good version of something or the first flaky version of something. Like I'm really coveting the new Apple Silicon Macs, but 3 years from now, I'll look back and go, oh yeah, you got one of those first generations ones, huh? Like, that's not always the best purchase. And computers are expensive, so. Anyway, that's what's new with me.
Yep.
Big boxed iMac G4 behind me. Secretly was in this episode the whole time. I positioned my monitor or my camera in purpose to say, oh, you can only see the little corner of it. I wonder if anyone will notice.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you guys? What's new?
Yeah. So, actually, maybe one thing I'll mention that in the chat. So back when we were talking about the digital trainer, one of the stickers, one of the photos had a sticker that said expiry date. And so Sorcerer Stan pointed out that it says like it has an expiry date of 1971. I think it was May 71. And then I typed something back to say, yeah, I saw that and I said, yeah, I saw that the expiry date is what I typed back. And it said, YouTube rejected your comment. This usually means they think it's spam. So I guess expiry is maybe not something you can type in a comment. I don't know, but well,
that's
anyway. So somehow Sorcerer Stan can use expiry date, but I cannot.
But
anyway, and
I had a friend of mine used to refer to when you get together with somebody to break up with them. That's the expiry date. So.
That's right. Exactly. And let's see. And Curtis also, mentioned that the original Bondi Blue Rev B had a tray for the CD. So, okay, Jack. Any closing notes?
I guess my only sort of retro thing going on at all is that I did get the turntable that I ordered.
Oh, that's exciting. What did you get?
pretty
don't know.
fun.
I've got a turntable, but I don't know them very well.
So it's what's it called? It's called an Ion Audio Air or something. It's like $100 on Amazon. It's got Bluetooth and a USB audio out and the normal audio out and headphones and all that stuff. So it's like cheap and connects to everything. And like, I don't know, it seems decent enough for me. It does have the option to swap out the cartridge for a stylus for running 78 RPM. Old-timey records.
Oh, I didn't know 78s used the different. I knew there were different speed, and a lot of turntables couldn't play those, but I didn't know it was a totally different cartridge.
It's different.
I had no idea.
So I think the other kind will work, but you risk damaging either the record or the stylus. I forget. So there's not. So it's not just the RPM shift. It's actually a somewhat different technology.
Do you have any 78s?
I don't have any, but I figure. I mean, if I could buy one that has the option to play them, then I have it. And if I come across any I want to play, then I'm good to go. So
my turntable, which is in the other room, is not a fancy thing at all. And I intentionally bought a super cheap one because every time I would read about turntables, everyone's experience, everyone buys one and then upgrades. So I thought, okay, I am going low. And then I never changed it. So I probably should have got it. But I mean, I'm not an audiophile. I can't. I like the experience of holding an album and playing things. So I just have that. I thought about the quality. So mine is just a weird looking little white thing. And I never upgraded it. I had it for like a year and a half now. And it hasn't even motivated me. I just love it as it is. So.
Yeah, I am not an audiophile either. And I'm not interested in saying, well, I got to have the perfect analog system with the tube hi-fi. And I don't care. Like this is talking over Bluetooth to a soundbar subwoofer that are attached to my TV, and that's great and it's fine. And
I put on a thing called a sound base. There's this thing made by some company called Soundbase, which is just like a square little platform that you stick a turntable on because you need, like with a turntable, you need that phono input. If it's not like a fancy one like yours, I can talk Bluetooth. It's like, no, I want to talk to the 1970s. But the Soundbase, you can plug in that, and it's basically a speaker that's some vibration thing. So I thought if it sits on a speaker, it's not going to just like bounce the needle off it. But supposedly it stops that from happening, and it's worked for me. And so it just sits on that with a volume up. So I used a thing called a Soundbase that was super cheap for it to just sit on top of. Neat. But mine doesn't do Bluetooth or any of these fancy things that you've got. Ooh, Mr. Fancy name.
But it wasn't even expensive. Like you can buy a really high quality, super expensive thing for $1,000 that doesn't have Bluetooth or built-in USB out or anything like that. So it's like I'm more interested in like a couple of useful features for me, just to make it work in my life without buying a bunch of other extra stuff. And then like you, I like the thing of having albums. Like I kind of I've missed that for a long time. So now my first two vinyl record purchases since the 1980s, I'm pretty sure, bought a couple of Bob Mould albums, and it's like it's just nice. Both newly issued, like his album from this year and his album from last year. I bought them as a pair. One is like funky blue and black vinyl. The other one's clear vinyl. It's kind of nice to have these kind of artifacts again.
That's cool. I like his band Sugar.
Yeah.
Their album was like one of my favorite albums at that time. I love that every track on that album. I just love.
Yep.
Mine is so low end. It uses a belt that's outside of it that runs around the outside of the thing on a little wheel. And the way I change speeds is you have to take the belt and move it up to the smaller one. And now it's moving it.
It's like a steampunk turntable.
It's like, okay, I could do that. I didn't even realize that at the time. I thought that was cool. It turns out if I want to run 45s, I have to move a belt up. I'm like, oh, okay. But I don't have it. I'm not interested in 45, so it's worked for me fine. But yeah, mine has no features. So
I can't remember. I don't remember why I was looking at this, but I remember wondering and then looking it up about the possibility of playing a vinyl record. Like now that we live in the age of a CD, right, and where you have lasers and things like that, and they can look at actual like indentations on surfaces. Could you not just play a record with a laser?
Yeah, I think there are laser pickups,
and it could like blast away any dust as it went. You could have one laser
disinfected with from all
the turntable that I had when I was a kid in like the 1980s. Well, my family had was this linear tracking thing that used a laser to read the track. So when you'd put an album in, it had all these features that like no turntables have nowadays. Like, and it would light up, like it could have up to 10 tracks on it. So it would light up like 1 through 8 if it read that there were 8 tracks, and you could press 5, 2, 3, 1, and it would play the songs in those orders.
Oh wow!
Because it would just scan over top, and it did that. And it was not like a high end thing. It was just like the 80s had that, and I think they were trying to keep up with CDs. And nowadays it seems like turntables have just gotten like stupid, because I think they're supposed to be like retro, old school, manual steampunk things. And I'd kind of rather have one that lets me just go. Like I wish I had a stacker like that lets you put a bunch of albums up. I think I would prefer that. Just keep all of my albums loaded on it and just say play them all. I've only got like 15. Just play every one of those. Whatever. It's not going to turn into an audiophile podcast.
No. Yeah,
And Mike has got into record. Oh, Paul, are you feeling the pressure? Feeling pressure to get a turntable? Be cool like us kids?
Yeah. Well, I do have, like I have a couple dozen, actual, well, maybe more than that, actual records, that, but and nothing to play it on. So some of them are old, some of them are new.
Your laser player?
What, sorry?
You're holding out for a laser player? Is that why?
Well, yeah, and I see now I can't remember why I was looking at this, because it does seem like that's just overkill. But I was thinking, obviously this, as you run a needle around the surface, it's gonna conceive. I guess it was the idea that possibly the needle could damage the 78 or whatever.
Right.
And actually in the comments, Curtis mentioned that that he'd inherited some from his grandfather, and then they're in pretty rough shape. And that's my recollection also of 78. It's like maybe the material was actually like easier to damage or something.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're right.
They're made of shellac rather than vinyl. And shellac. So it's also which is essentially, which my understanding is shellac is made from like beetle wings or something. Like it's some like incredibly like weird thing to manufacture stuff out of.
You hear the screams of the insects if you just play it raw ahead of time.
Yeah,
so you hear their death rattles. Awesome. It's hardcore, man.
But I think that was why I was looking at the laser thing, was just to say, like, so I could not damage any further the material, right?
And the thing is, as a kid, like nowadays, most people are into like super pristine. It's got to be these perfect needles. But as a kid, like I handled records very roughly. I stuck them on. I played them like, and that's a fine experience for me. I'm like, I don't care if every time I play my Madness record, it gets a little worse. I can barely hear it. I'm old, whatever. Play the album. All fine. That's like to hold an album and listen to music. So I'm all good. I really do not worry about excessive damage.
Well, and so when I did look into these laser things, I mean, like, so I didn't know about this, the kind that Carrington that you were talking about, where it could sort of detect the structure of the record.
Techniques, they kind of pioneered those things, but then like everyone did those. So look for mid 80s CD or audio or record players, and they all kind of did that kind of thing, all the linear tracking ones.
Yeah, that's interesting. But a full-on laser one, those are unbelievably expensive. I mean, like,
so those actually exist. Expensive.
You can get one, but I mean, you've got to be insane.
I'm not. Used to play a record, still gonna pop. No, not for me. Yeah. My record, the only thing I miss from my turntable from the old days is mine will just get to the end of a record and just sit there, just sitting on it, just grind it away. If I don't lift it up, it doesn't even automatically lift up. And I kind of wish it would lift up and go away and stop. So I can't like fall asleep to a record. It'll just all night long.
The one that I bought, it does stop at the end of a record. At least most of them, not all of them. But it doesn't lift up. And I think it depends on how big that circle is. Like when it reaches a certain distance, a certain radius from the middle, it's like, oh, I'm done here, and I'll stop. So if a record has its innermost point is farther out than that, then it won't do that. It'll keep turning. But it doesn't do the thing of lifting and returning back to the side, which I remember from a kid was what the turntables seemed to do. So they would get to the end, lift up, go back. Yeah, and then maybe drop down the next record.
Yeah, I never had a stacker as a kid. I've always wanted one of those, but we did have the automatic one. Now I got nothing. Just play one side on my own manual. Get up and change it. Your 4 songs are over. That's the only thing I remember. Go back and listen. Boy, there's so few songs on one side of it. Holy cow! Get up again. So every time I listen to records, it's a lot of getting up.
Yeah.
Yep. I still like these fun though.
I remember being pretty bad at like even as a child, and I'm sure I'm worse at it now. Aiming, like so the fancy ones actually had a little lever that would bring the needle down onto the thing. But like the one we had when I was a kid, I actually had to like put the thing down.
You have to lift it and carefully lower it down.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and it was never in the right place.
That's the extent of its features. It's got that.
Yeah, mine has the lever also. It has the lever and auto stop. Those are the only sort of like fancy features it has at all.
One up on me.
there was a so at Kansas Fest maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago or something. There was a person, Forrest, who did this, who wrote a Hackfest entry, and his concept was based on something that he knew from record players, from records, which was essentially that, so the way a record works is a sort of concentric, track that I know, I'm assuming that the sort of centripetal force or whatever holds the needle up against the edge of the track, but so there's a spiral and it follows the spiral and so forth. But the thing is that it is possible in principle for there to be 2 spirals on a record, right? So
there's horse race records that have 4 spirals.
Okay, cool. So and so what I think the idea was that if you put the needle down, it's just sort of a matter of chance where it's going to wind up, which of the sort of like grooves it'll wind up in. And so it was possible to have a sort of a record that would end in a random way.
Yeah, Curtis mentioned that in the chat right now. There was little flippy records from Mad Magazine that had that.
Flexi discs.
I remember one that was like, it was the thing that started off. It was like, it's a great, big, beautiful, wonderful, incredible, super spectacular day. And it's like a song about how great everything is going. And then it ends up in one of like 4 or 5 different terrible ways, like telling you how your day went to hell.
That's awesome. Yeah, there was
cool.
horse race games in the 70s. Like you'd get together with your friends or family or whatever and bet on a horse race. So you'd get an album, and they're called record albums weirdly because when you used to buy sets, I think of 78s that had so few little time on the album, you'd get a collection of records that were in an album. So anyway, you'd get these things and it would come from like 4 records. So you had 8 sides and each side was a race. So everyone get together and bet on, there's 8 horse races. And so there's 8 horses, bet on whichever horse or horses for race 1. And when you played it, it actually had like 4 or 5 different grooves that could go in. So you wouldn't, and it would be a horse race call, but you wouldn't know like who's actually winning race 1. You would just hear the call, oh, like we won. And that's how they introduced randomness to horse race games. So there's a bunch of series of those you could get of records that played as if they were horse races, and you would bet on them as a family. So it was a game, a quote unquote game.
That is really, I wasn't aware of that prior to this Kansas Fest entry, which I haven't described yet, but and it's that's really a cool use of technology. It's sort of like it's like demo level work on a record player.
Oh, sure, right,
yeah. It's like taking it beyond what it was intended to do.
Right, it's like 1 spiral track. Heck, let's have several. Yeah. Who knows where it will go? Let that thing slide around and land up somewhere.
Horse number 81. So,
yeah. Very cool. But yeah, so the Kansas Fest entry was essentially doing the same thing on a disk. So that like when you boot a disk, it goes and finds track 0, sector 0, loads it up and runs the code in it. So what Forrest did is he put like multiple track 0, sector 0s on there, and whichever one it found first, that's the one that booted.
Oh, cool.
So it would boot, what it was sort of random what path it would follow. So nice. I thought that was kind of a cool idea.
Nice. Curtis in the chat reminds us that some computer magazines put Flexi records to load programs too. Rainbow for the Cocoa did it on their 2nd anniversary issue. Yeah. Oh, nice. Little Flexi discs. Yeah. I had as a kid, I had this little van. It's like a little mini van you hold in your hand that had a record needle sticking down and a speaker on the top, and you would stick it on the record and it would on the record, just grinding into it. It's like all the auto shows, but like, whatever. I liked it as a kid, so I'd sit that down on records, and it would play, and it had a speaker built in. That was awesome, and it wouldn't work on those little Flexi discs. That's what reminded me of it because they were too small, or I don't know, something about it. It would just turn and then just go driving right off and go right off the table. But we work on regular albums, sticking on like a Styx album and just go, yeah, that's my cornerstone, a little tiny rockin' van. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
Sweet.
Yeah, reminded me a little bit of the. I feel like there was, the image that came to mind were these like little Fisher Price records, which you might possibly recall, but it was sort of record-esque, except that it was just sort of like a I don't know what you call it, like a music box in the stylus arm, and the little things just would pluck the whatever you call those things, the little xylophone bits in the music box. But
also had Mickey Mouse records that would play like a song, and you, like, every time you hear Tinkerbell do her little bells, you would turn the page, so you'd read a book and listen to the record, and the record would read you the story. So I had those as a kid. I'm all about the record and stuff. Blake is so upset he's not on this episode. He's the one of us super into records. We're like talking without him. Too bad, Blake. You missed out on this.
Missing out.
I think so. With the Fisher-Price records, I do remember that, because I mean, the way they actually would work is like you'd have a thing, like an actual sort of disc that had it was like a player piano or whatever, and you could put several of them, and these things continued into, I don't know if modern day exactly, but sort of like the relative present, but they turned into just like, they were just electronic. They were just like recordings of the things. Jack, I see you found
I found one,
an eBay auction for.
Oh, yes,
is this an actual vintage one?
Oh, right.
Yep.
So I mean, but that's what you have to do, like, because I think you can get them even sort of new, but they don't actually play the thing. They just trigger some sort of recorded thing, which is much less cool.
See, it's not actually like it's going to play.
Yeah.
The little xylophone thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those little bumps actually trigger things to play something.
Yeah. So
I wonder if that's the one Blake has.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had one of those.
Yeah, I had one of those.
I remember that well. But so that's it. So that's probably we never did discover until now what the common denominator is for people going into like liking vintage tech, is they had one of those things when they were a kid.
That was the thing. It's all off on that road.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. So that was Jack's closing shot.
Yeah.
What is mine? I don't know. I don't remember anymore. It's fine. Yeah, I think I mentioned this last time that I'm sort of in the process of now and sort of like the ending parts of like possibly owning a condo. Like, it's more likely than not that I will own a condo soon.
Exciting. Look at that.
So that'll be pretty cool. And actually also being fairly, I think what's going to happen is I'm going to move a lot of the junk that's in my office into a storage space that's kind of near where I live. So I think that'll be cool, because I can just like walk over and interact with the stuff and thin out my collection and stuff like that. So
good.
I think being close to it is going to lead to me thinning it out. The problem with one of my current problems is just that, like, I get the stuff, it's a project for the future, but it's at work and I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
So that future extends onto the indefinite horizon.
Yep.
As futures do.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess we can probably close this off. That's it for the show. You can find the show notes for this and all the RCR shows at rcrpodcast.com. You can discuss the show in the forums at vcfed.org/forum/forum.php, where we actually found, something that like actually did visit it just today. You can follow RCR on Twitter at RCR Podcast. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/RCR Podcast. You can send feedback to feedback@rcrpodcast.com. It's actually sort of funny when I listen to this, going at double speed or whatever, because there's a definite like you can tell that I've got this part down, and it's just the cadence. It goes yet another speed bump up, So, but anyway, so remember the Throwback Network at throwbackreviews.com. You can write reviews at iTunes if you'd like.
Congratulating us on 10 years.
That's right. 10 years and a bit now.
10 years and a bit. Do they make cards for that? Congratulations on 10 years and a bit.
And so, until next time, retro
compute.
Okay.
Record players.
Think as every time.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone joining us in the chat as well, especially Curtis. Felt like you were on the show with us today. It was awesome. I love looking over and seeing all the chat stuff.
Yeah.
That is. But Anthony and Curtis and Sosra and Remember lots.
Well, and Anthony too for filling us in on what it was that he actually posted in our Facebook group and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So-
but I super appreciate it when it's like having other people on the show with us. I really like it. I wish we could live. I can't respond to the chat. Like it shows us the chat, but I can't actually respond. I would respond all the time if I could.
Well, I think you can if you just open a YouTube channel. I mean, like you can.
But then aren't I going to hear our show in a bit of lag?
Yes. So you
can mute
that's
it.
not gonna work
Mute
for me
it.
at all.
Oh, mute it though.
Okay, maybe I'll try doing that.
But
I would
you
love
do
to
mute
all
it,
the time. I want to
do it
reply,
also,
and I'm like, I can't reply. Okay, I can just see it. I can see what you guys type, but I can't actually type back.
Yeah.
Oh, such a weird limitation.
Actually, another thing that we could do is I can I can show Curtis saying no problem, lol.
Wow, nice.
I like that. What?
That's great.
Holy
Yeah,
moly, Paul! You should totally do that as we get more comments in on things. I
Yeah,
love
didn't know
it.
you could
doing
do that.
that.
That's a great feature.
Yeah.
That's a great
Okay.
feature.
So now that we are pro users of StreamYard,
Yes.
Oh, I forgot. Yes, we are.
so I mean, like we're on the pro tier. We are not pros.
No, we're not pro users. We're just we gave them money.
That's right.
We pay to call ourselves pro users.
That's right. But cool. Yeah, maybe I'll spend some of the time that I have once I get caught up with the editing backlog, because I will be caught up soon.
Yeah.
I can play around with the production side. Notice we have a new background. So
I didn't notice we had a new background.
Yeah. Jack and I worked that out while you were away fixing your microphone. So
We figured out, let's have a circuit board back there.
You say fixing my microphone under the assumption that everything has recorded fine. Looking at the wavelength, it looks like it has.
Yeah.
Although, holy moly, it's just playing with the recording level like crazy in the background there.
Yeah.
It's being helpful.
Let's hope.
You'll tell me later how helpful it was.
Exactly.
We'll see.
Okay, so I think we can leave YouTube now. But thank you, YouTube.
Bye,
See you,
everybody.
folks.